to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May. Here. Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Here.
Councilmember Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum this evening. The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda. What's council's pleasure on the agenda this evening?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Any discussion on the agenda? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Yes.
Councilmember Piana.
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. Moving on now to presentations, and we have 3 this evening, and the first is from our fire department. And so I see our interim chief here. Good evening, chief.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Can I have Sergeant Schwall up to the front and center? Tonight we're honoring 2 of our firefighters, Sergeant Schwall and firefighter Dennis Barr, for promotions and advancement in their career. Sergeant Schwall has been with Ferndale Fire Department for over 19 years. Dennis, John, and myself all came on 19 years ago on the same hiring list. So I'm happy to say they're my friends and colleagues for that amount of time. And I've known John from the Fire Academy as well over 22 years ago. Like I said, he's been in the fire service for over 19 years, 22 years and 19 years with Ferndale. In those 22 years, John and his wife Patty have built a beautiful family, daughters Courtney and Shelby. Courtney just finished her degree at Oakland University in elementary education, and Shelby is her first year at Michigan State. Some highlights in John's career include being a paramedic instructor coordinator, a fire instructor, where he worked at Macomb Community College teaching hundreds of firefighter candidates throughout the years, as well as being an important part of the instruction team with the Ferndale Fire Department. John is also a hazmat technician, and he is our representative for the Oakland for the hazmat team. He has also received Firefighter of the Year a couple of times in his career, and he is currently enrolled in Eastern Michigan's Staff and Command Class 21. I've had the pleasure of knowing John way back when. I'm repeating myself. I'm a little nervous here.
Oh, you're great.
Trying not to tear up because I really care about this guy. Way back when in the academy, and I can say that John's passion has never died. It's always been hardcore. He's always been a passionate guy. His life is in the fire service. His father was a firefighter at Selfridge. And John just so happened to have gotten promoted on his father's birthday, and his father has just recently passed away. So it's very, very sentimental and emotional for John. Tonight, John's daughter, Courtney, is going to step up and pin John. Aww. And before we get that run, Courtney, come on up.
Uh-oh.
Can you do it?
It's a 24/7 business.
John's hard work and dedication have certainly paid off, and tonight he becomes a lieutenant with the Ferndale Fire Department. Please honor him, and let's have a round of applause for Lieutenant John Schwall.
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
Come on up, Dennis. Dennis is another 19-year veteran. This is Dennis Barr, everybody. Currently promoted to the rank of sergeant. Dennis joined the force back in 2000. Prior to that, he was with a paid-on-call department in St. Clair County for 6 years. So he's got over 25 years in the service. Since being hired, he's found the love of his life, Jamie. It's right here. And they have 2 beautiful children, Alex and Elena, who Jamie and Dennis wouldn't let come tonight because they had to do after-school tutoring, which I think is very unfair. They're good kids. Some of Dennis's career achievements include certified fire inspector, which he just earned through the National Fire Protection Association. He's a hazmat technician, formerly on the hazmat team. He was on the tech rescue team as well, and he's also a paramedic instructor. Dennis put a lot of time and effort into his career over the years and recently buried his nose in the books in the interview process, the promotional process of the sergeant. It's hard work. It's with this attitude that Dennis is looked up as a mentor by other firefighters in the department. He's always been a natural leader. And Jamie, would you please step up? Dennis, I'm proud to announce that you are the new sergeant of the Ferndale Fire Department. Thank you.
Congratulations. Excellent. All right, our next presentation is the 2019 Garden Club Scholarship Award. Is Toby here? I'm told that Toby and maybe some of his family are here.
Unfortunately, we do not know where Toby and his mother are, because they've forgotten, or whether they're running late, we don't know.
Oh.
The scholarship committee is here.
The scholarship committee's here. Toby is not here yet?
We hope it's yes.
Okay, we can hang on for a little while and give him some time, okay?
I'm going to call through his phone, so hopefully he's got that.
Excellent. We'll give Toby some time. That's fine. All right. Our next item of business is the fiscal year 2020 DDA budget. And who is presenting that?
Toby was here.
Cindy and Jackie.
Jackie's my able sidekick tonight, so.
Awesome.
This is the first time I've actually had to use this and read off my notes, so this could be fun.
Okay. There you go. So
Alrighty.
far, so good.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Wilcock from the Ferndale DDA, and this is Jackie Smith, the newly elected chair of our board. So we are here to give a budget presentation. I know in the past we've kind of done a state of the city along with our budget presentation, but due to some staffing changes and time constraints tonight, big kahuna of budget presentations coming up later, we're going to keep this one kind of short and sweet and focused more on the budget dollars. And then we'd like to come back next month and give you a few more updates on the state of the city, what's happening. That way we can provide some information and some data that council's been asking for regarding our business mix and those kind of things. So anything else that you want to hear, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we work that into our next presentation.
Great.
So moving right along. Here is kind of where we've been the last couple of years, what we're projecting to finish out this fiscal year. The information we'll be presenting tonight, and then kind of a projection the next 2 years into the future. So I'll go into a little more detail about where we've been this year and where we're going to finish out this year, as well as the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, the 2019-2020. But as you'll kind of notice, our revenues are staying close to the same. We've projected those out conservatively based on a 2% increase, which is what Oakland County indicated. And then we also did not include grant revenue in any of the upcoming years. However, we know that there probably will be some grant revenue and potentially some significant grant revenue because we are just completing our capital improvement plan process. And as we identify those projects, we'll know what type of grants we need to do, and then we'll be chasing those to help kind of close some budget gaps. So in our current year, the 2018-2019, revenues were slightly up from the year before, and that's due largely in part to an agreement with the Ferndale Area District Library. They have signed an agreement allowing us to continue to capture their portion of the TIF revenues. So we just completed the first year of that, and the board just signed an agreement for the next 2 years. This really shows a great partnership with the library and their dedication to helping this downtown grow. So we're looking forward to working with them even more on the future on projects, and then having them really be a part of it. We know they're a significant anchor, especially on the east side of the downtown. So we appreciate that they realize the impact that a healthy downtown has on the entire community. So our current fund balance is just over $907,000. I think it's significant to note for probably the past 10 years or so, the DDA board has worked really hard to build that balance. 10, 12 years ago, we really didn't have any savings. So the boards over those past 10 years have been really dedicated to not only saving money, but building reserves so that we could plan for some bigger capital projects. And even through the recession, our board was very conscious of not dipping into those reserves to cover regular operating expenses. So we're in a pretty good shape, and we're getting ready to move into spending some of those reserves on capital projects, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Our expenditures increased slightly. We just recently ended a long-term contract with our downtown maintenance provider and have signed on with Ferndale DPW. We're beginning the first full season, spring season with them, so there'll be some additional increases for the upcoming year. But we really feel this is a better way to go for the downtown. They really can offer enhanced services. They're much more familiar with things. They can also, in the long run, offer us some cost savings in a number of areas. And this year as well, I said that we were updating our capital improvement plan, so there's costs associated with that. So that was a pretty significant chunk out of our budget this year, but it'll be the document that'll help us then plan out the next 20 years or so for the downtown. And then we have, in this current fiscal year, we have some CIP projects that are still yet to be completed because the weather's finally nice. So budgeted in there is Schiffer Park, our portion of the Schiffer Park redo, a rainbow crosswalk on West 9 Mile, and then a bench and impact attenuator in front of affirmations that hopefully, as long as we have really good weather here on out, we will get those projects done before the beginning of the next fiscal year. I'm sorry?
What was that last project, Cindy?
It's basically a bench and an attractive planter wall to go in front of
Okay.
affirmations. If you look, there's a straight shot down Allen Road, right through the giant glass door, giant glass windows, that's presented a safety concern that we've always known about. So we've been working with police and fire and DPW and our design committee to design something that could serve as a barrier, but doesn't scream barrier, that's attractive and adds to our city. There used to be a big bus stop bench there that deteriorated over the years. It was part of the Bus Stops Here project from about 12 years ago. So it deteriorated over the years, and we had it removed for safety reasons. And now we have the opportunity to again, do something really cool that reflects the flavor of downtown, but also make sure that people are safe.
Through the chair, Cindy, when do we break ground on Schiffer Park?
I would defer to Parks and Rec on that, but I believe that's June.
Early June. Right after Pride.
Yes.
Correct, yeah, as of now, it's scheduled for mid-June, I believe.
Thanks.
So moving forward into the 1920 fiscal year, our major projected revenues are property taxes, which is our tax increment financing capture that includes almost $45,000 from the library, which again is a significant help in helping us continue to do what we want to do in the downtown. Our operating millage for all the businesses was about $61,000, and then contributions and sponsorships account for about $25,000. This is kind of a comparison of where we are this current fiscal year and where we're spending our money and where we'll be spending our money next year. And you can see there's a good significant portion of our upcoming fiscal year budget that's going towards capital outlay. So doing those capital projects that we talked about. And then we've diversified a little bit and spread it out so that there's a more equitable spending of what we're doing in the downtown while we're still we're addressing all the issues that have to be addressed. I talked a little bit about the fact that we'll be dipping into our reserves some. And there's really two reasons for this. The first is that we've saved so that we can do these big projects that has to happen. And then the second is, oops, where did I go? There I go. The second is the DDA Act has been rewritten to the Tax Increment Financing Act, Act 57. And it's got a number of new requirements. And one of the requirements is really having a good listing of how you're spending your reserves. They want to know detailed. If you have money in the bank, they don't just want it sitting there. So although there was some fear that there was a use it or lose it, that's not the case, but they want much more detailed information on exactly what these monies are going to be spent for in the future. So we have the money, we need to spend it down, and we have some great projects to work on.
Great.
So some of our major expenditures coming up for this year are personnel, although we've had some personnel changes lately since we really don't know what impact that's going to have on the budget. We're leaving things the same as they were projected out, with just a modest 2% increase for staff raises. Downtown maintenance,
Sorry to back you up through the chair.
Yes.
You're on the city healthcare plan, right?
yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Downtown maintenance, as we said, this is the first full year with DPW. They signed on halfway through the contract year in January. So there have been a lot of things that have needed extra work and extra attention in the downtown. So we've built in some extra hours to this year's contract just to get all those items addressed and get downtown back and up and looking the way it should. Next year and in the following years, that contract amount does reduce back down. And then, as I said, we also have capital outlay. We've got some big capital outlay projects slated for the upcoming fiscal year, including a $250,000 capital contribution to the West Troy streetscape, which is part of the overall DOT process, as well as $50,000 in upgrading our holiday street lighting decor, our holiday lighting. Again, we haven't done that in a long time, and it's looking dated and shabby, and as things change out and we try to switch over to LEDs, I think it's a good opportunity to really make an impact in how the downtown looks, especially in those long, dark winter months. So our design committee has been working on some new designs and ideas, and we'll be able to make a big impact coming this fall. And then considerations going into those additional years are the CIP plan update, which is our capital improvement plan. Once we have that plan completed and we have some prices attached to some of those larger projects that the community wants to see, then we'll be able to start plotting those out and adjusting the budgets for future years, so that we know where we're going to have that outlay of money. And again, the library agreement is worth $40,000 to $45,000 or so annually. So as long as we keep making the library happy, and by making them happy, we're doing our job. We anticipate that that'll keep happening, but that'll be renewed every 2 years or as the library sees fit. And then we've just got some priorities that we really want to focus on this year. Again, we'll touch more on this next month, but we really want to make sure that we're supporting our businesses and offering marketing opportunities and other opportunities, especially during construction of the DOT. So we're renewing our focus on that, as well as engaging the downtown stakeholders, and that's not only businesses, but residents, city employees, employees of businesses, and really updating a vision for the downtown so that we have a good roadmap to work towards for the future in conjunction with our CIP plan update. We also want to continue to work with our partners, such as the DPW and the library and other folks, on approving how downtown looks. We want to make sure that people know when they come here that this is a place to be that we all care about. And part of those are working on placemaking projects like the alley improvements that we did, the pop-up last year. So we're going to focus on those kind of projects as well. And finally, we just want to celebrate our victories, the victories of our businesses, the victories of the downtown, the victories of our volunteers. We need to do more of that. We need to share with people what's really happening and what makes this town so special. So we're going to try to focus on that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Before I open it up for questions, anything to add, Madam Chairman or Chairwoman, I guess would be the appropriate word?
We are really excited at the DDA, and the entire board is looking forward to doing some revisioning for the DDA. We have some ideas on how to bring more people in the community to look at and give us their thoughts and opinions on how they think the DDA can best serve them, the community, the businesses, and we're really excited about this opportunity to dig into our key initiatives and see if they still fit. Look at what is our structure going to be going forward. We have a lot of faith in our staff to help us get through this whole process and continue to move forward. We've got a lot of future to think about. Got some big future things that I think are on the horizon, and we're going to open up a universe of possibilities in the downtown.
No. Awesome. So does anyone on council have any questions of Cindy or Jackie?
I don't have a question, but I'm advised by council that we should do a separate motion to approve the DDA budget tonight as opposed to waiting for the later presentation.
Yeah, okay.
And through the chair,
Yeah.
that would be approval of the proposed budget, which will also then, after that
Be
approval, be
included in the-
adopted by the DDA board.
Gotcha, okay, yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, and also specifically, you talked about some of the major capital investments that you've made, including streetscape to West Troy, and I'm not sure you touched on it, it was in your slide, but the finances that you put aside to help with the parking mitigation in terms of maneuvering that. And so, on behalf of the city, I want to thank the DDA for their participation in that in particular, and, you know, in all the projects, so.
Thank you, we
yeah.
appreciate it. It's been a lot of work on behalf of a lot of people, but I think it's all worth it. And I'd just like to thank the city staff for helping us through this process and as well, especially Cheryl and Joe, who really pulled me through this to get this far. So
Excellent.
I appreciate all the work and look forward to working with them some more in the future on these things too.
Good,
I did have one question.
Please.
When does the DDA board expect to adopt the CIP, the capital improvement plan? Because I think council has to review it and adopt it as well. When is the final version coming to fruition?
Hopefully sometime in May. There's some additional information they're trying to gather that we're still trying to catch up on. So as soon as we have an update, we will definitely let you know. The goal was May. It might get pushed back a little bit to June, depending on how quickly they're able to get and then work with the final information. But we will definitely keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so if there's no other questions, a motion would be in order.
I'll move that we approve the DDA budget for fiscal year 2019-2020 as presented this evening.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Leaks, May and an O's. Any further discussion, comments, questions? All right, Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Potem Polika,
Yes.
Councilmember Piana,
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, ladies. No Toby yet, right?
I don't
Do we have
I
an,
apologize to all of you. I don't know, this young man is so busy with high school and robotics, and God knows what else this young man is involved. So I've got a feeling we got our wires crossed. I just texted him and said, we're at the city council.
Oh.
Where are you? So obviously not here.
No
I
response.
apologize. Thank you for putting him on your agenda.
No apology necessary, but let me just tell you, because she is right, that this young man is a very big, busy man. And so what we were celebrating tonight, even though he can't be here with us to actually hear us do this, is that Tony Weber is the recipient of the 2019 Ferndale Garden Club Scholarship Award and one of two recipients of the 2019 Jerry Ollie Scholarship Award. Toby is a senior at Ferndale High School, and he ranks third in his class, and it's a big class. He's president of the student council. He's a member of the National Honor Society. He's captain of the varsity swim team, co-captain of the first robotics team, and has earned a varsity letter for cross country. Toby plans to attend the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor to pursue a degree in nursing because he loves the idea of helping others. Nursing provides him that hands-on approach with patients that he is seeking. The community is very proud of Toby, and we congratulate him for all that he's done in his course at Ferndale High School. So let him know that we wish him very well, all the best. Thank you. Yeah. All right, we'll move on now to call the audience. This is your opportunity, if you're here with us in the audience, to address council on any issue that you'd like that's not on the agenda. Come on up, give us your name, and 3 minutes is yours. Good evening.
Good evening. Tim Risk, 541 West Hazelshurst. Mayor Coulter, first of all, I'll be the first tonight to thank you for your 9 years of service here in Ferndale.
Thank you.
I wish you the best in
I
your
appreciate it,
future
yeah. Thank you.
pursuits. After the last council meeting, a Ferndale resident who works for the Planning and Development Department in Detroit commented on a forum that she thinks NRAs are outdated and proposed that Ferndale adopt a CBO process, which stands for Community Benefits Ordinance. I asked her for some information on the subject, and she sent me some information about the city of Detroit. In November of 2016, Detroiters had two ballot measures competing for their vote. The first, Proposal A, was initiated by a group of community activists, It called for a community benefits ordinance that would require developers tax incentives for projects costing $15 million or more to negotiate community benefits with residents and sign a contract with them. The second proposal, Proposal B, put forward by a city council person, required developers seeking tax incentives to meet with a neighborhood advisory council prior to receiving approval for development. It did not require developers to sign a contract. Proposal B was passed, the other was not. It is noted that this was the first community benefits ordinance passed in the nation. In September of last year, Ypsilanti passed their own version of a CBO. And in the years since Detroit residents passed their CBO, it has been criticized for being too weak, and efforts are underway to revise it. Despite that, there are examples of successful projects that have gone through the CBO process. In one example from 2018, Detroit published a 130-page community benefits report for the Kiefer Development Project, which included a list of 18 proposed community benefits, followed by a comprehensive response from the developer detailing how they would provide those benefits. Given the events of the last few months, I think that Ferndale is the perfect place to adopt such measures. I would like to ask if any members of council would be interested in working on this. Given the amount of feedback and time put in by the residents on proposals past few years, I think that we should put community benefits at the top of the list of items developers will need to consider when they are considering a move to Ferndale.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Good evening.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Name's Lyle Weekly, 1585 East Hazelhurst.
Yeah.
My question, or I guess it's more of a question, is you're doing a lot of, the city of Ferndale is doing a lot of work over in that park. And it looks good. I seen the plan.
Which park is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Wanda.
Wanda Park.
Wanda Park. The thing I want to find out is what is the grand plan with parking? Because let me tell you, I got an F-150. If you park, there is no driveways across the street because there's a park there. So you got a line of cars going across there, and two people come between my neighbor and in front of my house. I'm not going to get that F-150 out that driveway too easily, if at all. I used to have a Ranger, and once in a while that would come up. Very rare, because a lot of things aren't happening over at that park in the past. And, well, I have a motorcycle. Last summer I took the motorcycle and no big deal, but I do not want to go through all that aggravation again. So if you can tell me what the grand plan is, because the last grand plan I heard was that they were going to ask the factories across the way if they could use that parking lot. Oh, come on. They ain't gonna do that. Those are private factories and et cetera.
Well, I don't know the grand plan or that we know that there is one, but.
Oh, okay.
Joe, if you're familiar with this issue, if not, we can take your
Yeah,
information.
Mr. Mayor, our Parks and Recreation Director, Lorena Wheeler, has actually worked to develop a master plan for Wanda that includes programming, updates on design and use, and she'd be happy to get your information and have that conversation with you and walk you through what that plan looks like.
So who is this?
Our Parks and Recreation Director, Lorena.
Raise your hand. And if you give her your contact information.
I will definitely walk back there and talk to her right now.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the
Thank you.
listening to my complaints.
Thank you. Good to see you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Evelyn Elster, West Drayton. I have 3 minutes to try to get through to you. I don't do grovel and I don't do schmooze. When our quality of life and property is threatened, I do snarky. You are correct that I don't want to be here, but feel obligated to defend myself, other citizens, and our pursuit of happiness from your policy flips. I am not the would-be oppressor here. This is not an attack, but a challenge to you to do the right thing in an attempt at our defense from your actions. I can understand why you would want the hard conversations out of the public eye, but the public eye is our best defense. Private conversations are to your advantage, not ours. Although you claim to be liberals, you now respond more favorably to money mongers intent on developing every square inch of this city at the expense of our green spaces and quality of life. Improving the parks was a noble idea, but it was allowed to be twisted by personal agendas. One guy with a pipe dream, a couple of slick sales pitches, 250,000 taxpayer dollars, and we find ourselves with a concrete monolith in a neighborhood park to serve the activities of maybe 40 people citywide. I drove down Normandy east of Woodward the other day and saw numerous parks with little more than hundreds of huge mature trees and some play equipment. It was delightful. Phase 1 plans for Geary Park called for a removal of 14 trees. The number went to 29 and now stands at 35. I can't believe they're all sick. You asked the company that would profit from the removal of the trees if they should be removed? Really? That's not ludicrous? So I ask, who are you and what did you do with the people we elected? Please stop, breathe, and check your motives. Consider the consequences of your actions here. The citizens of this city will be paying those consequences. And I quote from a Free Press article, "A plea for civility can camouflage a distaste for uncomfortable truths. Civility should never be used to silence opposing views." Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Joanne Wilcock, and I happen to be the treasurer of the Ferndale Memorial Association.
Excellent.
I know we're on the consent agenda for the parade this year, but I just wanted to, number one, invite you all to the parade. Our parade will be on May 27th, starting at 10 a.m. Basically, it's on Livernois. Maplehurst is where you get everything, and it goes to Woodward, to 9 Mile, and back to the Memorial Mall on Livernois, where we have a brief service to honor the veterans. We encourage you all to come, everybody in Ferndale to come. It's a family event. We would love to have you all. If there's any groups that are interested in participating, in particular in the parade, we have scouts, we have businesses that are marching in the parade this year to honor the veterans, and we would love to have more. Can I give my phone number over here?
Sure.
I will give my phone number if
It's your
anybody
phone.
wants some contact. It's 248-398-8219. Give me a call between 9 and 9. Please, not too late. But we would love to have more participation. And this is our 101st parade. Our first parade was in 1919, and it was put on by the Red Cross. So we are the oldest continuous parade in Michigan. So I think that's a pretty good accomplishment for us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Through the chair, Joanne, is there a registration form to participate in the parade or something we can keep up in the lobby here?
You know, that's probably a good idea. I can print off a few copies. I'm still at hard copy stage. So.
I mean, that's just so I don't.
Yeah, I didn't even
want
think
you
about that.
inundated,
But
if we
that's a
put some
really
up
good
here,
idea.
yeah.
Or if anybody calls me, I will be glad to send them to them.
Cool, thanks.
So thank you so
Yeah.
much. I will say we have a participation fee of $25. I guess it's a membership. It's technically makes you a member of the Memorial Association, but we are a nonprofit, and that just helps us put on the parade.
Yeah.
Scouts and military groups, we don't charge at all. Thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Becky Hammond, West Drayton. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I noticed something when I came in here that's related to Earth Day. It looks like maybe with just some slight adjustments of margins, you could cut your paper in half here, that this maybe could have fit front and back on one page instead of having so much blank space. Also, walking here, I noticed that my section of Ferndale is getting slated for sidewalk replacement again. It looks like the most recent job that was done is the worst, that most of the blocks that are marked with a B are the newest ones. You can't read the date stamps on them. You can read some from the 1950s. You can read a lot from the 1990s. I don't think that last company used very good materials. And so it's not very green to have to replace things too often, send it in the trucks and all that. So just an idea. The main thing I wanted to talk about again was the trees in Geary Park. A lot of us are still concerned. I couldn't make it to the last council meeting, but I was bothered by some things that when I watched the video, that were said at the end of that meeting. So, two things, the rumor mill and the things that we believe that, as we talk amongst ourselves, and then the tone with which we are discussing these things. So, about the rumor mill stuff, I'm thinking that if we were given more consistent numbers and the same reason, there wouldn't be so many rumors spread amongst us. So for weeks, the reason given for the removal of the trees was that they needed to come down to build the skate park and the basketball court. Not that they were sick. And the February 11th city council meeting, which I also was not able to attend, but I watched online, I watched it over and over again. How many trees are slated to come down due to construction? 29. No sickness of trees mentioned at all. I called Parks and Rec, and I was told two different numbers in the same phone call, 14 or 15, and then 29, due to construction, not due to sickness of trees. So it doesn't, and then several people that I know called Parks and Rec were given even different numbers, but again, not told that this was due to the trees being sick or dying. I'd like to ask, to head off some more rumor mill stuff, is it true that no resident has seen the arborist report that verifies that the trees are sick and dying? Because it's my understanding that a resident or some residents have asked for this and we paid for it, but that none of us are able to see it.
It was in the council packet from the Parks and Rec director on the number of trees and, because I saw it, but.
With a number
Why
of
don't you have
trees,
Lorena?
but the
Or
fact
do you
that
wanna deal with it
they're
later?
sick and what they're sick with, they're not all the same kind of tree. I was looking this up last night. It seems like 39 trees they're all different kinds of trees and.
If I may, actually, we also have conducted a tree survey, and that data is available at data.ferndalemi.gov. So all of the analysis on every tree is actually notated in a dot. And if you go there, you'll see Ferndale Tree Survey 2017. We have 2 quadrants updated in there, but all that data is captured and then dumped into that website for transparency purposes.
Okay, so there was not a separate arborist report for the trees.
For the park?
At Geary Park. Because the question I would have then, after looking this up, the kind of trees that exist around here and what kills them and how long it takes is, why were the trees so neglected? It seems like it would be a pretty unusual thing to have that many trees get sick and die, different kind of trees. It's not like they're all oaks and they all got oak wilt or something like that, which can kill trees pretty quickly, but it can be treated. It seems like if the trees are really sick and that many need to come down, somebody hasn't done their job right. Somebody was not paying attention to the trees and treating them for the diseases that they had at the time that they needed it. So, but, okay, and then so moving on to the part about the tone. I was really bothered by this. I was really bothered by the idea that angry people expressing concerns with city decisions are mean-spirited, because anger is something that you feel. Mean-spirited is something that you are. But the idea of a call to action being issued where people are asked to confront each other because of perceived mean-spiritedness, this seems like a terrible idea. At any time and place, this seems like a bad idea, but especially in the kind of political climate that we live in now, where people are pretty fired up and people are pretty angry, that someone could watch this video and hear something that they don't like and want to approach somebody because they've seen them on TV and then they want to see them in public. This, to me, is not the Ferndale that I would know, where we would confront each other from something like that. I also don't believe that Ferndale is about only niceness. I also read the Nancy Kaffer column, and one of you up there is quoted in it. It has some quotes like, I'm exhausted with us being polite. I'm exhausted with everybody not talking about problems. And I'm expected to be tolerant of things I am not able to be tolerant of. I think Ferndale is also about, nevertheless, we persist, we fight back. We don't want rezoning, we fight back. We don't want too many trees to come down. We don't want a college in a certain place, we fight back. That's also the real Ferndale. We're not just Pleasantville. We're not like the town in the Truman Show, you know? We're people who push back. And I think that's the
Barb,
realist too.
3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, I'm Sharon Chester, Boulevard, across the street from Geary Park. And I've been a part of both things that have been going on, Baker College and the Geary Park. And I want to express my delight with having the opportunity to, whether I'm pro or con on either topic, I was allowed to speak my mind, to visit with members of council, with members of Baker, with members of the Planning Commission, have my questions answered in a reasonable way and in a timely manner. And I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for so many residents to come out and state their case, whether they're for or against, and really be heard, because I always felt that I was being listened to, and the same with everybody else that came up to the podium. There's always going to be winners and losers in every situation. You can't please everybody, but I give you all kudos for coming together as a team. I know that the team is going to be changing in the upcoming years. I hope in that future that another cohesive team comes together and allows the community to have the opportunities like we've had to participate in decisions that are being made on our behalf. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time, for your effort, for your patience. And I personally am glad that Baker chose to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Louise Asher, 919 West Lewiston. Has there been any plan to put up no skateboarding on sidewalks in this city proper? I've had 2 run-ins with skateboarders in the last month and a half. The first time was in front of the Detroit Skate Company, where 2, I don't know if they were employees or customers, were flying in and out of the store, and then they were buzzing and harassing people walking down the sidewalk. Unfortunately, the elderly woman in front of me nearly fell. When the 2 young skaters circled back to attempt to buzz myself and my husband, I turned to face them and went into warrior stance, because I was going to knock them off their board and beat them senseless with their own deck. The second time, a friend and I were walking by the food mart, Ferndale Foods, and a skateboarder came at us at top clip. He was not going to give way. I said to my friend, hold firm. He saw at the last minute that we were not backing down, as I'm sure he's used to people doing, and he flew into a pole, went off his board, and it went into the street. Now, if we cannot ride our bicycles on the sidewalk, and I've never had a problem with a bicycle, but this is 2 encounters with skateboarders. We would really appreciate if there maybe be some education or some signs put up. Second thing I would like to address is art in the park. Mayor Coulter, please remember, anything you put up, they're going to tag and they're going to decorate the heck out of. Okay, which kind of deflect, you know, and if we're going to spend any more money on anything like that, please keep that consideration. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Hi, all. Dan Moyer, Central Street. First, I have an announcement I'd like to make. Drayton Avenue Co-op Preschool is having their annual auction this Saturday, April 27th, from 6 until 10. Tickets are $15 ahead of time, $20 at the door. There are great items to bid on, handmade items, items from multiple communities and everything else. As a former president of the preschool, it's one of the ways that we're able to stay open. So I want to make that announcement.
If I may, through the chair, where is the preschool located these days?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's now at Renaissance Vineyard Church. It moved there. This is the second year that it's been located there, and that's where the auction is this year as well. Thanks. So I'm obviously very happy that Baker is not coming to Ferndale. I do want to echo some of the comments that my neighbor made. I think during call to audience, we were always treated more than fairly, oftentimes given more than 3 minutes, and I do appreciate that. I did want to address just a few other things, and I understand that I'm probably not going to get answers here. And I'll do it as quickly as possible. And I don't have any intention of continuing to like prolong this Baker stuff. But I do have a few questions I think are reasonable and that would be helpful for the community to be answered eventually. So first, it starts with the NRA process as a whole, and I'd be interested in hearing just, some thoughts from all 5 of you as to why you agreed unanimously to enter into that process. I think that would be really helpful for voters to hear. What were the potential benefits that you saw from that proposal or that project? I'd be curious to hear what your response would be to those of us who think the NRA process might circumvent the democratic process. And again, you don't necessarily owe us that answer, but I think that would be helpful for residents to hear. And then I noticed today, as I was scanning through documents, in the letter from, I think it's Aquest Realty Advisors, the company working with Baker, in their opening line, they reference negotiations or something along those lines. I'll read it here because that'll be more accurate. We would like to thank the city staff and council members for the work that was put into this project over the past year. So that's the opening line of the letter. Maybe it's just a semantics thing, maybe it's weird, but that's dated April 17th. I certainly don't refer to things on April 17th as over the past year. So I do think another question that I have asked and that others have asked is when did conversations with Baker begin? We were told that Baker came to the city with this proposal, but I don't think we've ever heard an answer in terms of when that actually happened and when there were, and I think that would be really helpful to hear as well. Yeah, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to taking a victory lap on this issue.
All right, but on that last point, since it is sort of a question of fact, and honestly, I totally missed that was in that letter, but I'm looking at either Jordan or Joe, because we have not been talking to Baker for a year. That's a very odd sentence that just happened to escape. But do you recall when we got the first reach out from Baker, just to...
Sure.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay, no problem at all. Yeah, sure, the mic, yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Just
always
to be
in this
clear.
situation.
And when it came to council.
And when council was notified, but yeah, that didn't.
Sure. So they cold called the DDA several months before the NRA, but this is common for developers that are exploring a community. We didn't start working with them on a proposal until the NRA was signed. So what ends up happening is folks will kick around and they'll look at different cities for whatever they're trying to do, whether they're trying to open a store or a college or whatever it is, and they'll ask questions about ordinance and basic compliance, and so we'll share that information. But that's basically just standard customer service, just providing information on websites. So we worked with them, obviously, once the NRA was started, but they reached out to the DDA first, and they wanted to explore what ordinance was, what things they would have to comply with. So they gave us some basic questions before that, but that was about it.
Yeah. And when would that have been about? Just so we all, we're on the
So
same
I
page.
apologize, I don't remember the exact date, but I don't wanna give
Yeah.
wrong information. I'll follow up with that for sure and put it on the project website, but I apologize, I can't remember the exact date. But
And part of the reason is, we do get approached by folks a
Right.
lot.
Right.
Especially in this climate, in this economic climate, and with the popularity of the city. We get a lot of people talking to us. So it's not
Right.
unusual for a number of people to reach out to you.
Right. And
Most
that
of those don't make an NRA process or even get to council, obviously.
That's correct. I mean, we jokingly call those kind of projects our broad speculation file in the department, BS for short, because talk is cheap, and we do get that a lot, and it's not meant to be a dodge, and I don't mean to be flippant about that. There's nothing that we're trying to hide. It's just, I literally can't remember when the DDA came to us.
You can look that up.
But I will get that to you guys. And it'll be on the
But
project.
now that you mention it, that's a very odd sentence, because it hasn't been anywhere near a year. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Good evening.
Quick question. I have photos of what I spoke to you about. However, they are on my phone and I don't have a printer. But is there a way I can stick my phone under your projector and get it up on that screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about?
Is there a way that you could email the photos to us?
I got his card, but I took various shots of different angles, and I'd like to touch on that lady's situation about bike riding. Here's the issue with that. I'm a bike rider. With your carnivals in the middle of the streets and Dean and everybody else that has their chairs and tables in the middle of the walkway and the sidewalk. Something's got to give. Either get rid of the carnival, put it somewhere else, or have the business owners move their tables somewhere else. Because I notice in the summer, you got your bike riders, you got your walkers, and pretty much when you got a bike rider and a group of people, and you got somebody that's got their tables and chairs in the middle of the sidewalk, then you got a pole and everything else, and that little leadway to go around it. Now, there's little cracks in between those. A tire could get stuck, somebody could fall like I did last year and almost screw up their shoulders. So, I don't know. I know that I talked to, I think, that guy that I talked to sat in that chair last time isn't here now, but I, spoke to him, and you guys, he said, are supposed to be building something in 2 years for people on bikes to safely ride. Why wait 2 years instead of playing around with a skateboard park? Why not get that done, then worry about the skateboard and these colleges and everything else? When you got a major problem in front of you where people could get hurt trying to avoid situations, it's like I said to the mayor, that building you got going on where you completely cut us off from the sidewalk, Ferndale's 20-30% alcoholics. What happens if we can't ride on the sidewalk and we're having to ride on the side and a drunk driver hits us because you guys decide to close down sidewalks? It's going to happen one or two things. The city's going to get sued. Somebody's going to get really hurt. So, before you guys, decide to take up half of the sidewalk, close it, you might want to reconsider. You got a giant spot, and you got this fence in the middle of the sidewalk, and you're putting people in danger because they have to ride on the side of the street because they can't ride on the sidewalk.
All right, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
You've
done your time.
It's up to you, I know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So,
Yep, thank you.
at the end, I'll show you the photos and I'll send it to him, because if I get screwed up or my bike gets screwed up, again this year I'm sending you guys out.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mike Steidemann. I got the good news about a week ago that number 8 on the schedule tonight, Leah Deasy, is going to be appointed to the Board of Tax Review. I'm a member of the Board of Tax Review. She's going to be great. So I came in for that announcement. But I wanted to bring up something. About 4 weeks ago when I came in before, I brought up about a young couple that had built a house here and then was facing a tax bill of about $12,000 a year. Another one came to light where this was the opposite end of the spectrum, not a young couple, but an older gentleman who was building his retirement home. His taxes were going to be just over $12,300 a year. And we were able to give him some relief on that based on what's in our power to do. But About a week ago, I was sad to see that his house was listed for sale. And we hear this continually, right? Like, I'm gonna have to sell my house. Like, I can't pay these taxes. And to be fair, people should do their own research. They should understand how it works, but it's not really a very intuitive process, the way Proposal A works and the tax system resets. And because people have been in their house, are grandfathered in, and their rates only go up with inflation, you know, their taxes might go up. Last year, anyone who stayed in their house went up 2.1%, but someone that buys a new house, it completely resets. So you can literally have someone paying $5,000 a year in taxes, and then someone buys the house and it's, you know, $10,000 the next year. People don't expect this. They don't understand how it works. If there's anything in your power, and I don't know what's in the power, but to pass some kind of city ordinance requiring any sale of property in Ferndale to like acknowledge this and to present a fine if it's not acknowledged, because game theory would state that it's in the interest of the realtor to not tell this information, because the more expensive house they can sell, the higher a commission they get. So no realtor is going to be like, yeah, that $5,000 tax bill is going to go to $10,000 next year. Like, no one's going to say that unless they're prompted. So again, I don't know what's in your power, but I've seen enough people come in crying and saying they're going to have to move, and I don't want them to move because I think Ferndale's great. If they could just understand and maybe buy a slightly smaller house that's within the budget, we might all be better off.
Thank you. And I share your concern. Thank you. Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right, we'll move on now. We have two public hearings this evening. The first is the consideration of off-premise tasting room license approval for Traverse City Whiskey. And who's going to introduce that item?
I can introduce that.
All right.
So Traverse City Whiskey is asking for a location that is within the footprint of Como's, but a separate business. So they are looking at a new law that came up in the end of 2018 with the MLCC allowing for off-premise spirit room tasting licenses. So their main distilling facility is in Traverse City, but they can have up to 5 off-premise tasting rooms in other locations. So their request was reviewed on March 28th by the Liquor License Review Committee, which is several city staff, Mayor Pro Tem Polika, and City Attorney Christ. After discussion, the board recommended approval of the City Council of the license with the direction that the DDA board be notified and given the opportunity to review. They also met on April 11th and supported a motion to recommend that the city approve the request from Traverse City Whiskey LLC for a new off-premises spirit tasting room at 22812 Woodward. I believe that's Suite 200. And the applicant is here if there are questions of council.
Before we do the public hearing, is there anything, did she get that correct? And is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think she hit the nail right on the head. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Awesome. So then let me do this, because this is a public hearing. So I'd like to open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to address council this evening on this application request. Yeah, come on up.
See, again, I just got done talking to you about these bars and liquor places. Now this guy wants to open up what's going to happen one day between not being able to ride on the sidewalks and these drunks. Someone's going to get hit and killed or hurt, and guess what's going to happen?
Thank you.
I don't understand you guys at all.
Rufino, good evening,
Mayor
sir.
Coulter.
Yes.
Good council members. Rufino Valentine, live at 610 La Prairie, also own Valentine Distilling at 161 Vester, 965 Wanda.
Yes.
I'm not going to give my opinion of putting another tasting room within a couple hundred feet of mine in a city of 20,000. But just to put it in perspective, there's about 35 or 40 of these in the whole state. In proximity and per capita wise, this puts Ferndale at a national champion of distillery tasting rooms. So I'm not going to talk about that. We're open for competition and whatever, but I probably would have gotten into this process a little sooner. I really didn't learn about it until very recently, but what I am concerned about competition-wise is that we all play on a level playing field. And there's a couple things legally that I would like to bring up, and I think it's important, especially because, you know, the MLCC, our businesses are regulated federally by the Liquor Control Commission and locally. And a lot of times things, you know, get lost in translation between those three branches. One of the things that I see as a clear problematic area may be cleared up with expensive lawyers and dubious, you know, corporations or whatever. I have no idea, but it's very clear that the three-tier system, you can't have a supplier offering payments, and this includes leasehold payments to retail operations. So that's one area. The second area that I do know is very...
Can you back up? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah.
What that means?
Well, the three-tier distribution system was implemented after Prohibition, and what it essentially means is that suppliers can't sell directly to retailers. You have to go supplier, wholesaler, retail.
Okay.
That also brings into considerations of wholesalers making payments directly to retailers.
Okay.
So this location is directly in a Class C license. So there's two licenses under the same footprint, for one. So again, you know, through legal dubiousness, you can probably overcome that. I have no idea. Jared will probably have an answer to that. The one thing that I do know for certain, and this is probably an easy fix by looking at the floor plan, there definitely cannot be a pedestrian passway from a distilling license to a Class C license, or any license to another license. So I think that doorway that goes in between the two is legally very, very problematic. You could see if I just put a doorway in between myself and Embrew, like that is clearly illegal. You can't have different licensees with access to one another. So with all these things, you know, the MLCC a lot of times lets these things go, and then years later it's brought to their attention and they're like, well, sorry, we're not going to let it happen again. You know, that's easy for the MLCC. As a municipality, I think that presents a little more problems, where if one business is afforded those things, then other businesses may want those same variations. So, you know, that's my opinion. I wish I had been earlier in on this process, but it is what it is.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to address council?
I just have a question, because I thought we were under a no more liquor license kind of acceptance thing. So how does this even come into play? And if it's going to be two businesses under one roof or one address, you know, whether it's a different suite or business address, how do taxes come into play with that? So is it two different businesses paying the same assessment for taxes in that regard? So those are my concerns.
We'll try to address those when we're done with the public comment. Others from the public? All right, we will close the, yeah? No?
I just wanted to know if you wanted any information, additional information from the DDA?
You know
I was
what?
going to ask when you get there, so whenever.
Yeah, that would be great, Jackie. Why don't you come up, because I know you guys talked about this at your last meeting. So, yep, the perspective of the DDA would be helpful. Thank you.
At the DDA meeting on April 11th, we had a lot of debate on this, and we felt a little pushed to approve it. because we felt all the boxes were checked in the payment in lieu of parking on this, and that there wasn't an intensified use. We were taken off guard by this, and I don't know that anyone was in agreement with it. We just felt compelled to approve it because all of the boxes were checked legally. So there's a lot of debate between us on what we wanted to see in the downtown and then what we legally had to say yes to. I just wanted to let you know that we were stressed with that information.
So if I could ask you, so if, I mean, and this will be ultimately a question of Dan, if all the legal boxes are checked, then what choice do we have, I suppose? But what was the discomfort?
The discomfort was this was a surprise. That we felt that this is something that that is a loophole in our payment in lieu, and that we're going to dig a little bit deeper on whether, with the recommendation of Councilwoman Piana talking about, does this work or does this not work for us? There's been a few things that have come up in the past couple of years that circumvented that payment in lieu. And we're very frustrated on that because our intent is to help level the playing field with, for other retailers. One of our challenges that we have in the retail, where I'm a retailer versus a restaurant owner or a bar owner or a tasting room, and by the way, whiskey's great. I'm all for it. As a retailer, we don't come in with a large budget. We don't come in with being able to sign a 10-year lease, and we don't come in with the ability to do a giant renovation. So we don't have all that financing. So we're trying to create a little bit more level playing field for retailers to come in. And so looking at something that was originally a one business and then suddenly being broken into two businesses. So that was a frustrating part on ours, and yet we felt a little bit over a barrel on having to approve it. So I just wanted to make sure you knew.
Thank you. Thank you. Others from the public? All right. I'll close the public hearing, and now I would open it up to council for your questions and comments. And maybe, Dan, if you could start with, I guess there's a couple of sort of legal
if I could, through the chair, Mayor, what is being proposed is a resolution to approve the off-premises tasting room. That, should council elect to approve that resolution, it still goes to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. As was presented, this concept is within the footprint of Como's. I think the applicant can address the issue relative to the question that was raised as it relates to the ability to go back and forth between the two establishments. This is answering another question that was asked by the audience. This is not a Class C license. This is and it's not a DDA license. This is a newly created license authorized by a new public act that was effective in December of 2018. And so it is and maybe that's perhaps some of the surprise that the DDA had. This is a new type of utilization and ability for a manufacturer of distilled spirits to have an off-site tasting room. So that's.
Are you familiar with the ingress-egress issue that was raised?
Well, I have seen a copy of the floor plan, but I think perhaps that's one of the questions that for the applicant as it relates to whether that location is going to be secure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Rapp. I'm with Traverse City Whiskey. Yes, that connection is called a direct connection. It is actually a specific type of permit through liquor control as well. You have to actually have permission to have that. You cannot carry alcohol between that door, but it's treated just as another front door. And in this building, we actually have common restrooms, so that door leads to the hallway to the restrooms. There's another door in the back that leads to the hallway to the restrooms.
But you are taking food between the two locations?
We are using their kitchen So there will be a food runner that will take the food between the locations, but no, we don't expect any, we're going to have some very abbreviated menu, if you will, of different food, not the same food that's at Como's, but it will come out of the Como's kitchen. We'll run it to our side, and then our staff will serve that, those small plates and whatnot to the guests.
Just for clarity, but I can't order your food in Como's and I can't order Como's food in your establishment.
Correct. Yeah, we don't expect guests to transgress between one premise to the other. I mean, it would be a destination at that point.
And this space would be branded as, is it the Traverse City Whiskey Company and different ownership than Como?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, they're just leasing you the space.
Actually, Como's is not leasing us the space. The building owner's leasing us.
Building owners.
Como's is the tenant on one side, and we considered initially subleasing it from Como's, but we went to the landlord, and the way that it ended up happening is just a separate lease.
So if I may, through the chair, can I order your whiskey on the Como side?
You can, but it's not going to come from our bar or our supply. Como's will have to buy that whiskey from the state of Michigan, like everybody else, and then they'll serve it with whatever cocktail menu they're producing, and their staff, their drinks, and so on and so forth. We hope that they'll carry it, but
Did I hear you say that you don't expect patrons to go from side to side, but you don't expect it, but they could?
to sort of elaborate on that for a minute, I hope that someone might, if Como's is full, spend half an hour in our tasting room, or after dinner, hang out and spend the night, hang out with us, watch some TV, sit on our couch, whatever it might be. But we don't expect patrons to go back and forth as if there was no door there. That door is not something that's going to be propped open for people to go back and forth. It's not legal for someone to take a drink from our bar into Como's and vice versa. It's actually like walking outside and walking into the next place.
So if I may, I know this is splitting hairs, so the receptionist greeting the people that comes into Como's, we're on an hour wait. We're gonna go wait, they're not gonna come in and call the name of the table at Como's in your establishment?
Gosh, I sure hope not.
I don't know how you'd stop it.
That's just, I don't know how Como's is planning to do their notification system. I would presume in these days it would be by text message or something like that. I've seen that at a lot of restaurants recently, but no, this is not a, we don't have that kind of a vibe. I don't expect it to be particularly loud. I don't expect it to be the kind of place where someone comes in and cattle calls that the table for Smith and Jones is ready, party of 6. Sure. That would not be, no. They would need to get a new system if that was
Becky,
something they wanted
did
to
you
do.
have a comment about that? Yeah.
The fact that there's going to be food there is brand new, like this second, to the DDA board. It wasn't brought up to the DDA board. And one of the big questions we had is that technically it's not considered intensified use, but everyone on the board felt that this was intensified use. That you go from one establishment to 2 establishments, 2 destinations versus 1 destination. And that there is some math there, that when you have 2 different places to go to, you have 2 different places to get packed versus one place that may not be able to handle, the kitchen might not be able to handle the intensity. We just all, maybe not all, but there was several of us on the board that felt that there was an intensified use that we couldn't necessarily put on paper. It wasn't in ordinances. It wasn't something that we could do the math on based on our, on the ordinances available to us. But knowing that they're serving food, I don't know if that would have changed the board's opinion, but this is brand new as of 3 minutes ago.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Well, as City Clerk McGrath mentioned, I sit on the liquor license review board, and I was also at the DDA board meeting that we voted on this. And
I guess I was aware that there was food. I didn't realize the other members at the DDA didn't know that. I knew that because of my first meeting with the owner. And I struggled from the first meeting to the second meeting about supporting this. And the reason that I supported it was that it is not a new use for the facility. It is still serving liquor in a liquor establishment that was serving liquor prior to our, I forgot what it's called now.
Parking in lieu of payment.
Thank you, parking in lieu of payment. And so that was one of the reasons. The other reason is that I was concerned with the flow of traffic as well, and I kept envisioning the big doorway in Como's between the bar and the restaurant, and that's gonna be closed. And there's actually two doors. I would have to go through one door out of Como's into the common area, through another door into the tasting room, and vice versa. So it really isn't one door into one another, it's a door into a common area, and then a door into the tasting room. So.
Is that accurate, by the way?
There is a door, if you go in the back, there's two doors. There is a, to be honest with you, I'm not totally sure.
Well, if you look
I don't
on-
know
if you
exactly
look on
what
the
Como's
drawings.
built, but I know on our side, we built a door and they're responsible for something else, and I just have to be completely honest with you.
Okay, fair
I'm
enough.
not sure what they're
I'm
building.
not trying to put you on the spot, okay.
Yeah, if you look at the drawings, you can see that there's two doors.
Okay.
So that was another concern that was lifted for me. As much as I don't want new liquor establishments coming into the city at this point, I have a hard time, as Chairman Jackie Smith mentioned, it checked all the boxes. And that's why I supported it.
If I could, through the chair, I understand that these businesses are checking all the boxes, but what's to stop any other businesses along Woodward saying, we're going to do the same thing? And then we have twice as many or even more of liquor establishments and less room for anything else. This is where I'm conflicted about this, because I understand we're going through the loopholes and we're doing all the right things, but what's the right thing to do for that corridor? Is my question.
Through the chair, I was also at the meeting as an audience member to the DDA, and was not a voting member at that time on anything. And so I just wanted to say that in response to Councilwoman Leaks May's questions, I did ask the DDA and city staff at the time to report out on the impact of the parking in lieu of payment. It's been in place, for 2 years now, 3 years? And to see what are the results of the policy, and what are the results in terms of addressing the concerns at the time of becoming a entertainment district that pushes out retail. And the challenge is more restaurant bars come in, they push up rents, and retailers cannot afford those rents. And what happens over time is rents don't get decreased, they stay the same or go higher if they're restaurant bars. So that's sort of the situation of why the parking in lieu of payment was put in place. We are going to be waiting for those stats and results to reevaluate the parking in lieu of payment, because I think it's working. We just need to see how it's working. So that's what I have to add at this time.
If I may, I can comment on that too. Per that discussion at the meeting, we've directed the Economic Development Department, Community and Economic Development Department, Mobility Director Justin Lyons, who actually receives these applications for consideration, to actually suss through the detail and provide comment at the next DDA board meeting around the impact of the payment in lieu of parking program.
Okay, but for this project, nothing in my packet talks about payment in lieu of parking. Where would I find that?
It's not required.
It wasn't required.
Because it's an existing, and if I'm understanding this right, because the existing use is alcohol, it already has an intensity of use?
They're not retail. I'm not arguing with you, I'm just trying to understand it.
Yeah, I know.
Its existing use is alcohol, it's a tasting room with a retail component that wasn't there before.
If I may, actually, there was a retail, because through that bar, they could sell beer. you could carry out beer out of that establishment. Yeah, Como's, yeah.
And
Yeah.
wine.
Closed beer. I mean, you could open it up and walk down the street, but yeah, if you bought a six-pack. I do recall that. Now, maybe they were doing that illegally. That's very possible.
Second thought, but maybe.
But I know that there are establishments. I think Danny's does the same thing.
Maybe Dan Chris, why is, yeah, you're just getting people in trouble. Why was there no payment in lieu required in this
The way
case?
the ordinance is drafted as it relates to restaurants serving alcohol, and this is a off-premise distillery, off-room tasting distillery, and it's the language of both the city's alcohol resolution policy and also in conjunction with the payment in lieu, which is in the city's zoning ordinance, and the relationship between those. Going to Councilwoman.
Wait, I'm
Leeks.
sorry though, but I'm not sure I understand that.
I didn't understand it either, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's called a loophole.
That's, well, payment in lieu applied to a standard restaurant serving alcohol, which is defined in the.
Or bar, not a bar, just a restaurant.
Did not apply
restaurant
to a
serving-
microbrewery, or just microbrewery, small distiller, or distillery. And that's the way that was crafted, and that is subject to being further amended at some point by council to go into some of these additional subcategories of authorized licensed establishment. This particular type didn't exist until December of last year.
Right.
So to clarify, if I may, in my mind, what's the difference between this and the microbrew that did pay the payment in lieu of on Woodward?
Yeah,
required
one on
it.
the other side of the street, the guy from
Same
Macomb
venue,
County.
same food, is it just that it's beer versus alcohol, or off-site versus?
I think
Oh, off-site maybe?
I would defer, take a look at, and need to look at the license that applicant has. But I can certainly get an answer to you on that. Okay.
May have been a brew pub.
They're not serving food.
Yeah, Cindy, you have a response to that?
Yeah, I believe the reason that Brooks Brewing had to pay into it was because they were intensifying a use. That location they went into was not a restaurant, bar, liquor license establishment prior to that. It was a retail space, retail-ish space. It was a
But going
service space.
with, well, that's another argument, okay.
So that's what I guess my point was.
So that's why
I
they
thought
intensified the
because this
use.
wasn't an intensification
Well, I
of
think that was
use.
also what the Liquor Review Committee focused on as well.
Was it intensification?
That's right, that it was within the same footprint of the
Of
code.
what's, right.
It's the same footprint.
They're already drinking there, I guess.
They're already
It's-
drinking, it's not the drinking point. It's the sale of the actual product. Whether Como's was doing it legally or illegally, I mean, it's a retail space with some serving and some food. It's not the same as it was before.
Well, didn't we want more retail in downtown?
Oh, there you go, yeah.
But it's a combo. Through the chair, I have a question. Maybe this is to Councilman Dan Martin, but I think, yeah, well, you're on the planning commission. It's a planning commission question. When the Como's got this site plan approved, it was for one business, right?
Yep.
Did they have to come back to the planning commission in order to get this second half approved?
I don't recall seeing it.
So I'm just wondering how out of the blue
Did this come back to planning
Como's
commission?
can
'Cause
create
they-
two businesses out of their one that
the
they
original-
approved
yeah,
to site
The original
plan.
Como's proposal didn't include this.
That's correct.
Did they come back? I don't recall seeing it.
I don't recall so either, but I'll double check the minutes right now.
Okay. I mean, maybe it was in a meeting I missed, but I don't recall. Did you
So-
go back to planning commission?
So, it's my belief that we were on the first set of plans that went out for the permit back in whenever it was. I just remember, forgive me, I don't remember exactly what the
Yeah, I
date
don't
was,
either.
or
Yeah, that's what.
I barely remember anything these days, but I do remember that we were.
Whiskey will do that to you.
We worked together on the architectural plans, and I'm fairly confident it was there unless they approached the city at some time long before we were ever
So I'm just going to throw out there that I feel really ill-prepared to move forward on this tonight until we have some of these basic legal and process questions
Answered.
resolved, and I don't feel like we have those answers tonight. I don't know if there's other questions that people need resolved, but in lieu of the fact that I don't exactly understand how our parking payment in lieu missed this, I'd love to know more about that, the intensification of use, this particular point about the planning commission. I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate to reconvene when we have this additional
Yeah,
information. I'm just throwing that out.
and then the one question I wanted to ask is how does the lame duck MLCC legislation that was passed that allows the 5 tasting rooms, right? Because that was a lame duck amendment,
Yep.
right? So that was passed 3 years after our parking and aluminum payment, and so I'm just wondering how does that state legislation impact
If I may.
current policy?
Ma'am, I can actually speak to that. We oppose that legislation. I'm a member of the Michigan Spirits Association. I serve on the board of directors over there. And we were not consulted before that legislation was introduced, was rushed through by another association, not even in the spirit space. And it actually did not create a new type of license. What it did is it restricted our ability to have this license. When we came into Ferndale, there was no local approval of any kind required. This was considered an extension of our manufacturing space and a use by right in any area that allowed a retail use. There was no local approval. We have actually a couple facilities up north, and we've never had to do this before. What this law did in December is it created 2 types of tasting rooms, and the type of tasting room that we have, which is not on site with our production facility, is called an off-premises tasting room. And now we are limited to 5. Before, the limit was unlimited. So this is a new restriction on us. It's actually been the law of Michigan since 2006, give or take a couple of years, that there was an accessory use of having a distillery manufacturing facility, that you could have a tasting room. And that's pretty much how it worked. And now what ended up happening was, as part of the brewery restrictions, they lumped in our esteemed legislature on December 20, whatever it was, in the middle of the night at 3:37 in the morning, put this restriction on us. So we had actually already been through liquor control, and then before the permit was issued, they had to reject it. We came back to seek the blessing from DDA and from the liquor committee, and now from council. So we've worked very hard for a very long time to try and get to this point, and it's been very confusing, and I appreciate everybody, everybody in the city working with us and trying to help us get through this new process.
And please understand, because I appreciate that, it sounds like, I don't agree with the way the legislature does business at the end of the year, so I can sympathize with you. Please also know it's confusing for us too. We haven't had this process before, we haven't had this issue before, and you are in a very, we're very congested these days, as you may have figured out, and so you are in a very prime spot, and we just need to make sure that we understand this, and we don't exacerbate the issues that we have. So please don't take this personally. This is new for us as well.
I don't. The 2 things I would like to add, number one, is that we actually reduced, albeit not by a huge amount, but we reduced the overall space of the bar. It doesn't hold as many people as it had before. It won't serve as many people as it had before. Those changes are permanent. In a lot of cases, they're structural. That we also don't anticipate to maintain the same hours that Como's does. I don't know what their hours are going to be, but whatever they are, if our hours are like what they are up north, it would be a substantial deviation. So those are the 2 things I can tell you sort of about the specifics of this project.
I just wanted to say, we've had this challenge before with the state changing liquor license rules related to our current ordinance, and that was the early liquor license before you got the full liquor license that happened.
Conditional.
What was it? A conditional liquor license? Well, you are definitely not in that category of business owner, of Eden, that was part of that change in law. We definitely took our time to navigate it, and so I appreciate your patience as we figure this out.
Mayor and Council, if I can offer, staff could, should council choose to table a motion until the May 13th city council meeting, that would provide time for staff to provide an update to the DDA board and city council concerning the impact of the payment in lieu of parking, and to offer clarification in terms of eligibility for that program between the two establishments that we've discussed tonight. It would also give us an opportunity to address the question of whether this was clarified on the planning commission documents.
So I would be supportive of tabling it until the next council meeting for staff to deliver on those items.
Agreed.
Agreed. So we don't need a motion to do that, do we, Dan? Do we just?
Well, if you wish to have it tabled to the next,
To the next-
either
yeah.
not take any action or table it specifically to the next council agenda. If there's no motion, then,
Well,
but if you wish it to come back
I
at
would
the next
suggest we
meeting.
table it. If for some reason they're not,
Public hearing.
they don't have all their i's
They've
dotted and t's crossed, they might need next year. But the intent is to come back at the next meeting or as soon as possible. Is that acceptable to council?
Yes.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yep, appreciate it. All right, very good. We have a second public hearing, and that is something we spend a lot of time on around here, and this will be relatively brief, but don't let that mistake how much time actually goes into our triennial city budget for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2022, budget and consideration to adopt. Joe.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'm assuming this is why the audience viewing and both here came to see the show tonight. We have a very exciting presentation of the city's triennial budget, fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 22. Council does approach budgeting for a 3-year projected period. In addition, though, this evening, we're also going to be reporting out on City Council's strategic plan and mash both presentations up into one presentation.
Mash them up.
Before we move forward, it's always good to just articulate the city's community vision. This vision statement was adopted by City Council during their initial strategic planning process. And so a vision statement is very much a description of a desired end state. And so this council's desired end state for this community would be to serve as a benchmark for the modern community. It speaks to embracing richness of diversity, culture, and certainly presenting an inclusive hospitality towards everything that we do. From the mission statement, that is staff's perspective on how we approach our business in serving the public, and we view ourselves as stewards of progress, anticipating needs, engaged with our community, and serving with excellence. To that end, there's 4 components of tonight's agenda. We're going to have a overview of the community revenue picture. And that's going to be presented by the Finance Director, Cheryl Stubblefield. Then I will be handed off an overview of the City Council strategic planning. This is the first budget presentation where we've actually organized budget highlights for our ensuing budget year under key strategic outcomes that City Council has adopted via their strategic planning process. I will provide a brief overview of the capital improvement plan update and next steps, and then we will close on an overview of non-general fund revenues, or special revenue funds, if you will, specifically sanitation, auto parking, and water. Those are being treated a little bit differently because they each incorporate a fee schedule that will be adopted as well. And here's our Director of Finance, Cheryl Stubblefield, to walk us through the revenue picture.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening. Well, we're going to start right off with the operating voted and the regular operating mills for the city. This is the basis of what our budget starts from. You'll see the 5-year projection and the 2-year history on the board. So what we've tried to do is keep the mills stable. So as the Headley has been reducing our operating millage, we've been trying to make some of that up with the voted. But you'll see come 2022, we start losing the Headley as well. So our operating millage has a Headley rollback, and then our Headley has a Headley rollback. So by 2022, we'll be down from 16.9917 to 16.6569. Then in 23, we go down to 69193.8, and then in 24, it'll be down to 15.7435. Now, we've highlighted 24 because that's pretty much the last year that we will have that voted Headley override, and we will have to either go out for another one, or as you can see from the operating, we'll be down to 11.4495 mils.
Okay, can I just summarize that? And I know you're
Sure.
gonna do it here, but for people at home, this is like the weirdness about state municipal finance is that, just to clarify, our property values are going up in Ferndale, but the city's ability to collect on that increase is decreasing. So there's this inverse thing happening between what people think should be happening and what reality is happening because of state law with Headley and Prop A. It's very confusing for everyone. So, thank you.
So the next slide, you'll see, it's basically a picture of what you just said.
Yep.
Councilmember Piana. In 2007, we were just above $8 million in revenue from the operating mills. And you'll see we took the dip. The biggest hit was in tax year 14, which was fiscal year 13 for us. And you'll see that's the green bar. That's as low as we dipped down to almost $6 million. But we had the Headley, the blue piece is the part that's making that up for the voted Headley override. And you'll see even back to the 2020 that we have projected, it still is just where we were at in 2007. So this is the general fund revenue and expenditure projection, the big picture. You'll see there is some growth as we start to 19 and 20, 2021, and then we level back off. The expenditures, we've got some growth in the revenues because we're using some of the capital funds to do some of our capital projects that we have planned. And that's why you'll see it kind of raise up a little bit and then it'll start to level off. Just as a side note, so the assumption, or do we have an assumption slide? We have an assumption slide there. So this is just the assessed values from, it shows our assessed values compared to the county. So you'll see that in 13, we were assessed below the county and then we kind of skyrocketed above where the county's trend was for our assessed values, and now we're starting to come back down and level off with the county. So those are the reasons why I used, the county believed there was some economic softening trends. They didn't really say that it was gonna be going down, but when you look at this last graph, I kind of feel like it's gonna be going down more than the Oakland County softening. So when we went back to the drawing board, I lowered some of the increases in revenue or in the taxable value to 5% for the next couple of years and then 4.5%. Just because I think I'd rather be safe than sorry in looking at those trends of what's going on with the city and the county.
Did the county ever say why we popped up so much higher than the county in a 2.5 year period? I mean, because this is what we're hearing from residents, right? It's getting harder to be able to purchase a home here because the property values increased so much.
Right, it's just supply and demand. I mean, it's really nothing any more than that. It's a desirable place to be. You know, Ferndale did really well through the housing recession. And so it's just bouncing back so much better than a lot of the other communities around.
Well, if I can add, I think a lot of people took advantage of the downturn back in 8, 9, 10 and bought a lot of rental houses that they then started to sell as the properties went up. So I think that's another reason.
So this slide will show you what we just talked about, the revenue assumptions that I used. Our rollback factor, which is the amount that our millages are reduced. So for every 10 mills, we get 9.7. The rollback factor is 9.722 this year, and I kind of skimmed all of Oakland County, and that's the lowest rollback factor in the whole county.
And how much does that equate to?
About $300,000. When there's a couple things you have to do, but you have to apply that to how many mills we're collecting and what our mill is worth at this point, so it's about $300,000 based on 16, 17 mills. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So for the taxable value, like I said, I lowered it to a 5% increase and then kind of started going down. And historically, we've been trending even. You know, I've kind of looked at the average that we've had for the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm really no longer comfortable doing that. So we're going to see a little bit of a downturn in the revenues that I projected.
The questions will be later, okay? After the presentation. After the presentation.
And just popping through the state government revenues, we did call attention to the state disinvestment. So the state of Michigan actually provides local municipalities with constitutional and statutory revenues. And I'm just taking over here because we wanted to, if you click that, if you're following us at home, if you click this link to the state investment, it's going to pop open a study from the Michigan Municipal League, of which Councilperson County can speak to. The website is called Save My City, and this just illustrates the impact of the state's policies regarding revenue sharing with the local government. Yes, according to Save My City, the amount of revenue sharing lost since 2002 from Ferndale specifically is $17.8 million.
Yes, so I just wanted to say, combined, when you have the Headley rollback and the lack of revenue sharing, you have a compounding factor that cities aren't getting the same amount of revenue that we should be because of these factors. So it's always astounded me when I see this for Ferndale. But when I read it for Detroit, it's 1.6 billion. So I guess in comparison of what they've lost, a stark difference. But nonetheless, impactful for all the cities who are losing revenue. Thank you.
Well, and I think if I may I think what that does is it's taken the local control from the tax dollars that the state gets, and they're kind of hoarding the tax dollars and not allowing us to decide what to spend them on.
We have a few more pop-out links, so we'll try to be more efficient with those. Okay, transitioning to expenditure assumptions. As I said, we're going to organize these and according to strategic outcomes as articulated through City Council strat plan. And so I will walk the Council of Public through that. But 2 items of note, anything labeled as capital, coded as capital, is reflected in the budget details, is funded by the Public Improvement Fund, Fund 445. And there is a specific note about a personnel change. There's one requested position for Parks and Recreation, which we'll cover a little bit later in detail. So the City Council held a strategic plan. They do this biannually. This year is 2018. They met and they conduct a review of the previous 2-year accomplishments in terms of the strategic plan, master land use plan, and other initiatives articulated through critical visioning documents. They conduct a current environmental scan. And then they invited this year the Planning Commission, the DDA, and members of library and leadership team to kind of get together and just make sure that there is agreement on near-term and long-term priorities, articulate those, what's being updated in terms of the next 2 years after reviewing the previous 2 years, and then, of course, concluding with strategic alignment. 7 success factors for this community include economic prosperity, having a safe, protected, and engaged community, supported infrastructure, accessible transportation and strong regional partnerships, having an organizational and financial excellence, and healthy, connected, and invested neighborhoods. Critical success factors are articulated as things that must go well in order for us to succeed and achieve the vision stated in the city vision statement. Moving forward to the waterfall effect, really this is about plan integration and alignment. So by City Council holding the strategic plan and prioritizing, it helps articulate the things that must go well in order for us to succeed. So the top level of this plan is called the CSF. Cascading below are the initiatives and projects that need to move forward in order to support those outcomes. And below that are actions that should be related to those initiatives. And those actions are really represented tonight via budget resources or human capital requests. All of those things push the needle on pushing those initiatives forward that support those critical outcomes. So I'm just going to briefly walk you through each section under the critical outcomes. So under economic prosperity, I'll read this for the audience. Ferndale has an energetic downtown and an expanding and innovative industrial district. Entrepreneurs look to Ferndale to start and grow their businesses and contribute to a balanced and local stable economy. Again, each of these are vision definitions, and vision definitions describe the ideal state. City Council's strategic priorities related to those for this biennial period. Key priorities, one is cultivate downtown office space, support business collaboration throughout each of these business districts, pursue affordable housing policy, and address workforce development. So specifically during this budget process, you're going to see an initiative that's called Open in Ferndale. It's a business campaign that's brought forth under the Economic Development Department. And that campaign seeks to unite and collaborate all the business agencies throughout the city. And then, of course, the Auto Parking Fund and the Economic Development Department is pursuing resources to help deliver that downtown office space, conveyed through the ENRA and the partner with Versawana LLC is the DOT right now. It's currently underway. The second is supported infrastructure. Ferndale cares for the infrastructure and assets that provide critical services to the community. Ongoing maintenance is funded and planned for in both the operating budget and capital improvement plans. Because this is infrastructure and because so much capital is required in terms of infrastructure planning, you're going to note significant investments in terms of actions. But council priorities are to deliver gigabit fiber for phase 1 assets. Those have been identified as the DOT and Schiffer Park, specifically because construction is already underway. So we're going to leverage that opportunity to save some money and be efficient with our resources. And then bringing gigabit to the City Hall campus. And that campus includes the City Hall, the Police Department, the 43rd District Court, and possibly the library. A discussion would be held with them as well. And the DDA office, certainly, if they're located in the City Hall. We're working on fleet management policy, addressing that. We're addressing questions about street lighting and citywide LED conversion, and we're addressing the digitization of city infrastructure assets. Specifically, phase priority is continue to close out the digitization of our water and stormwater treatment plant as a critical asset. So some highlights, again, the gigabit fiber, you'll see that is notated in the associated capital items. The police department is looking to complete the installation of a solar-powered carport to power police vehicles at City Hall. Street lighting, we will be bringing recommendations to City Council concerning citywide LED conversion in the coming months. Green infrastructure plan, the draft fleet management plan, and the water fund you can see is included under this infrastructure in terms of digitization of their assets. Also, a big piece of supporting infrastructure, supporting your roads, and in 2015, voters approved of a bond to reinvest captured millage towards road improvements. On the city's website, if you look at the homepage and drop down, you'll see a section about roads. And the streets that are suggested for the 2020 proposed road paving program are located here and also located in this budget presentation. If folks at home go ahead and navigate to that, if you click on a line, you'll see the name of the road and the segment, the specific segment that's going to be improved, and then the actual health rating of that road as described. So a lot of information about there, again, going back to putting our data out there to be useful to the public. The third CSF speaks to safe, protected, engaged community. Ferndale residents flourish in a safe and welcoming environment where public safety is foundational to community health. City government is accessible and responsive to all who choose to engage in routine civic life. Specific council priorities around this success factor are for our police department to continue to pursue accreditation, formalizing an emergency management plan for municipal public buildings, and updating the city's website. So specifically to that, the police department and the drug forfeiture fund are supporting this by installing public call boxes and surveillance system for the DOT. The police are going to be applying resources towards pursuit of accreditation. This will be the first year. That would start July 1 this fiscal year. And the fire department seeks to backfill 4 firefighter positions that are vacant, as well as to review critical safety, capital investments, and fire facility improvements. The fourth success factor is accessible transportation options. Ferndale prioritizes safe and accessible transportation options within the community for all users, from walking and biking to driving and transit. So this really speaks to the city's goal for multimodal transit. Priorities around this are to define mobility standards in our bid process. This really integrates mobility in towards the fabric of the procurement process. We are looking to establish a mobility peer benchmark group to benchmark our success against other leaders nationally. And Woodward planning is the biggest item here, but is also the biggest question mark because that is a state highway, and the city has to coordinate most of our infrastructure planning around the Michigan Department of Transportation. To that end, the major and local road funds, which are special revenue funds or non-general fund revenues, are pursuing TAP grant opportunities, and the TAP grant is actually just a complementary grant that seeks to leverage all of our road projects where possible to add in multimodal components to those road projects. Specifically, TAP grants that are being pursued for this fiscal year, 2020. We're looking at West Marshall improvement between Woodward and Livernois. The Community and Economic Development Department pursued a TAP grant that would provide value of $440,000 in contributions. And then Woodward Avenue, it's, again, the MDOT is going to dictate in terms of when they're going to reconstruct Woodward. But as long as they do, we're going to try to leverage that energy. And we pursued a TAP grant valued at $5.5 million. More on that as we receive responses from the granting agency. I'm moving along, sir.
No, it wasn't
I'm joking. Providing some levity to budgets. I'll continue this, and then I'm happy to take that question. The city government recognizes leading a modern community requires a commitment to internal quality and financial prudence. City employees are committed to innovation and continuous improvement. So this is really benchmarking our internal processes, making sure that staff reflect the best of the public's endeavors. And so those strategic priorities around that are formalizing an employee wellness program, establishing a sustainability plan, getting back to the question of incorporating green into the fabric of process, pursuing program and outcome-based budgeting, addressing the open data. We mentioned that earlier today. Publishing and managing our data transparently. So we have launched data.ferndale.mi.gov. This will be building upon that success. And establishing a community civic leadership model. Specifically, two highlights to speak to are the Community and Economic Development Department's goal of establishing the first revolving loan fund to support energy initiatives moving forward. And then the City Manager and Finance Department are going to be seeking recommendations on how to move towards transitioning towards program-based budgeting or outcome-based budgeting. Sixth, only two more. Strong regional partnerships. So Ferndale recognizes its role as a convener and connector of local and regional partners that contribute to the city's success. We seek to support the school district, the DDA, library, and other regional governments and non-governmental organizations to engage with the city for support and partnership opportunities. Specifically, City Council enumerated the collaboration with school district on land use planning, aligning planning and city resources with the DDA, and aligning development planning with other area governments as well. And we could speak to that. A couple of highlights. It will be in terms of staff energy this year. The CED will be leading support for U.S. Census support in terms of turnout. We will be coming to council with an update on what that looks like in May for the community. And the city manager's office is supporting the DDA right now during the transition of leadership. And so that is how we are focusing our resources at this time going into the fiscal year, support those actions. And finally, this is one of the biggest initiatives because of all of the parks, as evidenced through all the parks investments of the recent years, but healthy, connected, and invested neighborhoods. Ferndale has a variety of housing choices for every age and income level, interwoven with an integrated park system that serves as focal points for engaged neighborhoods. Residents actively contribute to a thriving environment, enhancing their homes and supporting our community. Specifically, City Council's set priorities to provide resources for neighborhood groups to organize, to ensure that all parks exceed minimum ADA requirements, especially as we're redesigning these master plans for these parks. This is the opportunity to do so. To develop Phase 2 of the Geary Park Master Plan and to develop Phase 2 of the Martin Road Park Plan, which includes the biggest component, the splash pad investment. Under those initiatives, what we are doing to support those initiatives, the Economic Development Department is looking at piloting an off-site meeting space for community and neighborhood meetings based on some feedback that we've received around restricted access to public space for meetings for communities. And we are pursuing an inclusive housing action plan. So City Council actually adopted an affordable housing policy, and the Economic Development Director seeks to take action on that policy. And so there's been some budget set aside to develop an action plan for inclusive housing. Parks and Recreation is asking for a programming specialist to help program all of these capital investments within the multiple parks. And the second phase of the Gary Park Master Plan and Wanda Park Master Plan are enumerated here as well. If folks click on this at home, you'll see a draft presentation that highlights all of the park projects. Our Parks and Recreation Director is going to be also providing an update on our parks projects to the public in May as well. Here's a summary of the position needs for the Parks and Rec Department. Specifically, number one is the park improvement and master planning. So again, having someone to leverage these capital investments to make sure they're used. And that concludes the summary of City Council strategic planning and priorities for this fiscal year and the actions the staff are taking to support those endeavors. Now just a review of the capital fund, which is Fund 445. The capital fund is really enumerated in the capital improvement program, and that really kicks off the budget process. So we'll be looking to actually push that process up. Typically, it would start in October. We're recommending that we move the budget process up to June. And we're doing so because we have so many capital asks, specifically about $15 million just in the next 5 years. So we have a lot of capital asks, and we think that incorporating some prioritization and incorporating some community input to help us prioritize those capital asks are going to be helpful. Additionally, we're looking at possibly extending the capital improvement program from 5 to 10 years out because we have such an ambitious vision. Current major unfunded capital projects, so these are not in the budget, but they are reflected in the capital plan, is addressing a DPW building. We project that could be $5 to $8 million. The facility study is currently being assessed. Addressing the LED conversion options, which we will bring forth to City Council in the coming months. The Kula Community Center, a task force met in January, February to consider some options. There were two options that were considered by the task force in terms of moving forward. One would be a brand new community center for $12 million to be located at Martin Road Park. The second option would be rehabilitating and improving the existing Kulik Center at the existing location. It would cost between $5 and $6 million. We're doing a little bit more due diligence in terms of community feedback. That task force recommendation is actually going to be pushed forward to a couple more focus groups throughout each quadrant where possible of the city. And we hope to bring a summary recommendation back to City Council in the coming months as well. Woodward sidewalk improvements, again, because a lot of this is leveraging our relationship and the work plan of MDOT around their work on Woodward. We are looking at potential for up to $5.6 million in just right-of-way improvements, specifically sidewalk improvements from 8 Mile to Pleasant Ridge. And staff has also pursued a TAP grant to support an expansion of the West Troy Street project. So the West Troy Street Escape project, with the support of the DDA, is being developed in front of the dot, but the rest of West Troy is not. So this TAP grant would endeavor to expand that out to Woodward. Financial options to achieve all these capital requests. We need to incorporate prioritization and ranking in the CIP process, and we need to consider whether it makes sense to expand those asks out from 5 years to 10 years planning. Of note, our bonding capacity for actually bonding some of this items is $18 million as of March 2019, according to our financial agent. And so bonding capacity is a tricky question in terms of a policy. It's been practiced typically not to try to avoid maximizing bond capacity where possible. So that's a policy consideration moving forward. Input recommendations, so re-envisioning the CIP process to incorporate ranking. And then we're looking at leveraging the U.S. Census and requesting council consider a 2020 Cobalt Community Survey. And Cobalt is a municipal survey specialist that speaks just to this. And so we are finally going to close on just the non-general fund revenues, specifically sanitation rates, water rates, and a highlight of the parks bond usage and the auto parking fund. And Cheryl and I will keep going back and forth at this point.
I just want to say on the non-revenue portion, in the interest of time, I'd like to executive summary it because we still have an entire agenda to get to. So if you can get to the salient budget points, I would much appreciate it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about sanitation rates. Those are going up about 1% a year. The sanitation fund is also a victim of Headley, so that's why those need to continue to go up so that we can fully fund our sanitation area.
Yep.
The auto parking fund, when you're reviewing that fund, you're going to see the insertion of the annual $1.1 million debt service payment for the DOT. That takes effect starting this fall. that first payment is due. Operating expenditures, you're going to see considerations of the final year construction administration payout. You're going to see building permits associated with the DOT. The final building permits will be drawn through next fiscal year. Additional support for temporary parking services during construction. City Council approved the support of $90,000 to support downtown businesses, to support construction. And that's, again, working with the DDA on that programming. And then some staffing adjustments for public parking. In terms of capital expansion, I'd like to highlight that our sustainability planner has provided a plan to incorporate electric vehicle charging stations throughout some service lots as well. So we'll be looking at that. We do have some utilization data on that she'll be providing before we actually initiate that capital expenditure request. And finally, there's some other capital improvement funds for the other parking lots because we do have a parking system beyond just the DOT. So we pick up capital improvement programming again once the DOT construction is concluded for the rest of the system. We have noticed from a revenue perspective that there's been an adjustment in metered rates and enforcement hours to help offset debt service that is due in the fall. And closing on water and sewer.
So I took the water and sewer study that Plant Moran had done a few years ago, and I stretched it out, filled it in, and we are able to keep our water rates at a consistent 3.6% increase each year. And we're able to do this and also look at doing a major capital improvement in the meters and the readers, which is what we've been having some issues with lately. It's a big capital expense, but it's going to provide a ton of transparency. Citizens are going to be able to go online and look at their water usage by day, by month. They're going to be able to get alarms sent to them if they're on vacation and there's a leak detected or something like that. There'll just be a lot more contact between them and what's going on with their water usage. And I think it's going to make it a great transparency factor for all the citizens. And we're anticipating bringing that back to council in the next month or so.
And to close on the Parks Bond, the major outlay this year is the $955,000 towards the splash pad at Martin Road and some other amenities. This is just a snapshot of the spend down of the Parks Bond. In 16-17, that kicked it off with the development of Safety Town and some playground equipment at Garbutt Park. 18-19, we had some initial investments in playscapes. Wanda Park was mentioned earlier this evening. Schiffer Park, Geary Park, and Wanda Park are all getting invested in this year. And then, of course, Martin Road, again, is the big ticket item for next fiscal year, starting July 1.
If I may, through the chair, this is terrific, because I'd asked for this, but I want more. So at some point, if we can sit down, like I specifically want to know what went into planning, actual playground construction costs. You know, if we can do it, flip it on its side and do like a product line budget, and let's see how that came across. But this is a good first step.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll bring that presentation to City Council in May. And then finally, to conclude with the 5-year overall city millage outlook, this just summarizes Cheryl's earlier discussion, but also includes a millage that covers solid waste and a millage that covers the city's existing debt service. Outside of that resolution, you have an additional millage for the DDA, an additional assessment for the Coon Drain improvements.
Bless you.
And with that, I'll take any questions.
Actually, so this is a public hearing, and so I'm going to open it up to the public and ask if there's anyone here from the public that would like to address council on the adoption of our budget. All right. So seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will ask council if there are any other questions or comments concerning the budget.
Just one quick question. From fiscal year 18 to 23, it looks like a 25% decrease in millage for rubbish. Why is trash getting cheaper? Is that because of recycling, or?
Are you talking about Dan, I'm sorry, can you
Yeah,
show me what slide or tell me
So
what
the
slide?
very
you're
last
looking
one,
at?
the 5-year overall city millage, if you look at the rubbish line, it's at 2.03 in fiscal year 18.
Oh, yeah, that's the Headley. So the
Rollback.
sanitation millage is also subject to Headley rollback.
Okay.
Keeps on giving.
I thought we were just getting cheaper trash. I don't know.
No.
Nope, nothing gets cheaper.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
No, I feel like I really know it well.
We do spend a lot of time on this, but I would be negligent not to thank Joe and our staff, and Cheryl and our staff. Seriously, a lot of time and effort goes into presenting this budget. There's a lot of information in here. It's all online, so I encourage residents, when you got some spare time, but you really want to see the nuts and bolts of how city government operates, it's all in there. And this year aligned with our strategic priorities, which is really helpful, so I appreciate that the staff aligned the budget that way. So thank you to Cheryl and Joe very much. Appreciate it. And now we need to adopt the budget, correct?
I'd like to move that we adopt the triennial budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021, 2022 as submitted by the city manager on April 22nd, 2019.
Support.
All right, further discussion. Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The budget is adopted.
Now I'd like to move that we adopt the appropriations resolution setting the tax rates, water and sewer rates, and sanitation fees for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2022 as submitted by the city manager on April 22nd, 2019.
Support.
So I do have a question about that, because, and I bring this up every year, I believe, and I'm looking at Dan Chris, we can only adopt the rates for the following year. Although we adopt a triennial budget and we project out for planning purposes years 2 and 3, we're only authorized by law
Should be just for fiscal year 20.
for fiscal year 2020.
Well, what's listed in the resolution is the millage rates for 2020.
Yep.
And then the only thing that extends out those 3 years are the sanitation rates and the water rates.
But I don't know that we can.
Those would be addressed next year, too.
Yes,
They're in the
it
budget.
it goes in each year.
So I guess I would suggest an amendment to the motion that just adopts it for this year, understanding that we work on a 3-year budget cycle, but we technically only we can't tie the hands of the next council on that budget.
I will accept the amendment.
Okay.
Do you want me to take that out of the resolution from now on?
I would, yeah, just because I think it's, yep. Excellent. All right, other questions or comments?
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir, of council. The public audience participation is over.
Ask her my question.
During our public hearing, which we had. I'm sorry, sir. All right, Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on, next is the consent agenda, and consent agenda is adopted in one motion by council unless somebody removes something from the consent agenda, and I'm going to read that now. Item A is the approval of the meeting minutes of April 8, 2019. Item B is the approval of the proclamation declaring May 2019 as Mental Health Month. Item C is the approval of the special event permit for the Crohn's and Colitis Fundraiser Fest on Sunday, May 19th at Harding Park. Item D is the approval of the observance of Memorial Day with the 101st Annual Memorial Day Parade to be held on May 27, 2019, as organized by the Ferndale Memorial Association and authorized the mayor's signature of the agreement. Item E is the approval of the resolution recognizing Team Guts as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of securing a charitable gaming license for their fundraiser on September 20th, 2019. Item F is the approval of the purchase and installation of the Ultra Nexus HD media server from Sound Planning in the amount of $11,682.44 from the account noted in the agenda. Item G is the approval of the purchase of an asphalt recycler and hot box for $27,752.21 from the Falcon Asphalt Repair Equipment, and that the expense be charged to Local Streets Fund Capital Outlay account number as noted. Item H is the approval of the extension of the agreement with WatchGuard in the amount of $3,500 from the account noted. Item I is the approval for the mayor or the finance director to sign paperwork needed to finance the 2019 dump truck for 5 years at $50,197.94, 3.091 interest, for a total amount financed of $250,989.70 to be charged to the DPW capital vehicle account as noted. And finally, item J is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the city manager's office and subject to review by the council finance committee. What is council's pleasure on the consent agenda?
It's just us.
Oh, okay.
Have to be one of you two.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Leaks May and supported by Martin. Now, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika? Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you, that, the consent agenda is adopted. Moving on now to the regular agenda. The first item is a consideration to appoint Leah DC to the Board of Review. And is she here? I don't believe she's here. But Marnie, do you want to introduce that item, or just, what?
Cheryl's going to introduce.
Oh, Cheryl's going to introduce that item, pardon me.
Because I know how you guys love your finance director.
We do.
We do.
As you know, we've struggled trying to keep board review members on our board. We've had a couple longstanding members that have moved either out of their home and into a rental space, and because of the charter, you have to actually own the home to be on the board of review. I am under the understanding that Leah was on the board of review previously, and she comes highly recommended as coming back on the board.
Is there a motion?
I'll move that we confirm the appointment of Leah DC in the Board of Review for a term ending December 31st, 2020.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Is there discussion, questions, comments?
Thank you for serving. whoever she is.
Absolutely.
All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika? Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That appointment is adopted. Moving on now to regular agenda item B is the Baker College ENRA acknowledgement. And Jordan, you're going to introduce that item.
Hi, and I just have a quick 55-page slide summary to go over that really fast for you. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So it's literally the two-page memo that was included in the packet. Nowhere near as nice of transitions
And that's
as
his
our
boss,
interim
too.
city
That's
manager,
fine.
yeah. So I have a feeling might have a one-on-one tomorrow. But no, in all seriousness, good evening, council. Good evening, mayor. Good evening, Joe. So as you saw in the packet, essentially there is some correspondence dated April 17th from Aquest Realty, and my staff memo kind of summarizes our department's reaction to that correspondence. Essentially, with the progress of the ENRA, the different community conversations that have been happening, this issue of parking, Baker has a certain timing that they have as part of their master plan, their strategic plan, and the city, we laid down that preference at the behest of our downtown business community to avoid any further loss of downtown parking. And so it's the opinion of myself and our department that those two elements were irreconcilable, and Baker did decide, based on their inability to meet that standard, to suggest closing negotiations. So that's what the correspondence kind of lays out. That's essentially all she wrote there, but I'm happy to take any questions beyond that.
So are there questions or comments from council?
Comment?
I have more comments than questions.
I don't know that I have any questions.
Yeah, comments, opinions, thoughts.
Thoughts.
Yes.
I just actually want to take this opportunity to thank the community, thank Jordan and everyone involved regarding the process. I think it was very transparent. I thought people got a chance to voice their opinions. I want to thank the community members that reached out to me personally and wanted to express their thoughts regarding the project and come up with clear, concise reasons as to what their concerns were or what their concerns weren't. So I think things happen for a reason, and I think that I appreciate your efforts and the process, and looking forward to moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go next.
Sure.
In fact, I'm going to respond actually, or make my comments around the questions that Dan Moyer asked, because I thought they were very appropriate. But I will start with where Raylon started and thank the public, thank the staff first off. This is an enormous amount of work, and I really appreciate the diligence with which you guys addressed it and approached it, so thank you. I also very much appreciated the public comment on this project. I think at times there was a perception we didn't want to hear them, and that was exactly the opposite. We very much want them engaged, and we as a council, I'm very proud to say, encourage engagement, and we should continue to do that and embrace that. So the first question that Dan raised was around NRA, the NRA process and why we voted to approve it in the beginning. And I'll just speak for myself. I won't speak for my colleagues. But, you know, when Baker approached us, it was a project with some potential and some possibilities. And I think we owed it to ourselves and our constituents and the community to explore it. And that's what the NRA allowed us to do. Frequently, the questions, I think there's a lot of confusion on what the NRA does and what the NRA does not do. The NRA does not commit us to the project long-term. The NRA does not mean it's a done deal or anything else, but gives us an opportunity to collect data and collect information, explore the public benefits, and look at things like parking mitigation and how we get around those things. And I voted to support the NRA because I thought it was worth taking a breath and exploring those things and looking into, and I don't regret doing that. I think if someone shows an interest to that level in the city, preliminarily, it sounds interesting, we should take the time to explore that. Now, to the second point as to whether the NRA squashes the democratic process, I don't know that I would go that far, but I think there's definitely room for improvement, and I want to credit my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Polika. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but you said something the other day that I think was very true. The pattern and the structure of it, though, creates an interesting dynamic. Because we are negotiating in good faith and because we are still collecting the information the community benefits, frequently we just didn't have the answers to state or come back with, or candidly that I could form a final opinion of whether I would support the project or not on. We were very clear up front, I think, that we wouldn't support a project that further impeded our parking. We needed a solid parking mitigation plan that's there. We wanted to see the community benefits. We're not going to vote or support anything that didn't have the community benefits. But with the kind of debate that was being asked for at times, I felt like forced me or would force me into a position that I just wasn't willing to take yet, because we were still doing that research. We were still collecting that information. I'm not going to sit here without the information and provide a pro-Baker argument, which I may not hold for the sake of public debate, because that will get misconstrued even, I think, farther and longer than anything else. So we have to find a way, I think, in this process to look at whether it's an NRA or we look at a community benefits ordinance like the gentleman earlier spoke about, that we do clearly engage in a process of research and collection if we decide this is a project we want to look into further, and then expand on the back end once we have the community benefits, once we have what we feel would be a workable parking mitigation plan, and up and down the line to really have an intensified community engagement at that point. So we're all speaking from the same facts. So we're all speaking from the same data tables and everything else that's out there. I think that's a really crucial improvement to this process. I never worried about this council making a wrong decision per se, because I think we've demonstrated historically we're willing to say no when the project doesn't work. But we are a council that wants to do that from an informed position. And I think the way that we proceed, I think the NRA is a decent starting point as it stands today, but we've got to modify it to make sure it allows for that kind of, I think, collection and formulation and intensified public engagement. Once again, we're all singing out of the same hymnal and have the same facts and can have that debate and discussion that is more meaningful. I really appreciate all the research the residents did and to bring that to the table, but we were still very much in our process of researching it, and so it was difficult to respond at times, and I found frustration in that as we moved through it. So as these opportunities present themselves in the future, and be clear, they will present themselves again in the future, we take it some time to debrief and look at something like Mayor Pro Tem Polika suggested with the intensified public comment at the conclusion of a more clearly defined research. I thought we were clear, but somewhere along the line that seems to have misfired. So again, we can all contemplate and make a strong decision with the same information and be as transparent in that process as possible. Because transparency isn't anything we should ever sacrifice. So I guess for now, those are my comments on the topic.
Thank you. Other comments?
I'll just add on to Councilman Martin's statement, because he said a lot of the things that I would have liked to have said, of course, more eloquently. I think there's a misconception that the NRA is a process to protect the city, and in fact, it's a process to protect the developer. And so they're coming to us requesting a contract to protect their interest, but there's also a level of protecting our own interests as well, depending on what the project is. That's why one of the things that I'd be concerned about with a CBO, a community benefits ordinance, is that ordinances are restrictive. It doesn't allow opportunity to be variable. There's no variables within an ordinance. So I would be worried that we would then treat every project the same. And no two projects are the same. We've realized that over the several years. But I appreciate you giving me the credit.
That was your comment.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think that there needs to be something at the end of the process that says there's a 14-day or 30-day period of community engagement once we have all the information. So that I think there was a misunderstanding that once the NRA ended, that we were just going to vote on that day. Like today, we were going to vote yes or no on Baker. And that wasn't really the situation, but it wasn't clear. So we've learned a lot through this process, and I'm glad that we did. Today, there's a lot of information that we still don't have. So if someone were to ask me today, well, how would you have voted? I couldn't tell you, because like Councilman Martin, I'd like to have all the information, and I just don't have it. So I couldn't tell you that I would vote for or against the project. Baker did it for me.
Councilwoman Piana.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity of comment, because I think Councilman Martin expressed the frustration on behalf of residents who didn't feel like they were hearing from their council members about our opinions. And I definitely felt muffled about giving mine. And the reason it is that I agreed to this negotiation period with with Baker College, and that's sort of what NRA has does. And when council does opine strongly along the way, we actually undermine staff's ability to deliver on that negotiation on behalf of the city and the residents. And we are also put the legal agreement at risk when we do that. And so I found that process somewhat a little restrictive myself as a councilwoman. So reflecting back onto what I heard from the residents, they felt that was somewhat restrictive as well. That is my takeaway. I do want to comment about the community benefits, and while I agree that we need to take a look at a community benefits, how do we strengthen that in the process? And I do want to say that our staff did review Detroit's community benefits ordinance to guide this process with Baker College in lieu of having one. One of the pieces of information we were waiting for was the actual community benefits outcomes from all of the engagement, and how this Baker College is going to support what we've been asking for and what we heard from the community. One was they don't pay taxes. What are those benefits you're going to give in lieu of not paying taxes? And that was the information I was waiting on, and unfortunately, well, we'll never get to know, because Baker ended the agreement before we can talk about those. And community benefits have always been a major priority for the city, and I think if you saw what the DOT project staff presented them as community benefits as well. So I think we can take a look at the ordinance from the engagement side, and there are pros and cons from the Detroit CBO, which is something as part of my job where I work, is understanding it, and it is a complicated process that can lengthen significantly the time to make a decision. And so those are some of the pressure points between what a developer wants, what the city wants, and what the community expects. That's an ongoing negotiation as well on timing. And then, I think I also learned my lessons learned and sort of retrospective through this, and I know the Planning Commission needs to address it. One of the areas that I was concerned about was building design. I said good urban design, and thought that the Planning Commission would be able to address it. And even though it never came to the fruition, I had significant concerns about the building design. And I think our zoning code needs to be addressed through the Planning Commission as soon as possible to address those loopholes that were sort of found during this process. And then finally, I just want to say, I really did do my due diligence behind the scenes. I had called city managers and mayors of the other cities that had a Baker College. I met with experts on anchor institutions about how does an anchor education institution act as a community partner. And so I was really looking forward to sharing all of that information as part of the information sharing session and the CB, the community benefits, but that's for another time and another day. And so I just wanted to say thank you for the residents participating every step of the way. That this is like the third major development project in our downtown. We've improved our process, and I think that matches what you've heard tonight. Well, maybe not, it wasn't part of the strategic plan update, but we have a value of our community or city staff and city council of continuous improvement. And where it didn't work so great, that we go in and figure out how to make it work better. And that's our commitment to the residents and community for the next big project, because this site is going to be generating interest. And one thing I'm really glad about is that the city does own land there, because it's our leverage point. And it's something that we can negotiate community benefits agreement out of a future developer. And so how we improve the NRA and CBA process is something that we need to do probably rather quickly, because I suspect there's going to be more interest sooner rather than later. And then I just wanted to say thank you to Baker College, mostly for recognizing Ferndale's assets and our community values and our character. So many businesses are choosing our community because of those things, and Baker College saw those in our community and wanted to reflect that in their next phase in their process, their educational business plan, strategic plan growth. And so I can't fault a business owner for seeing the greatness in our community. So good luck to Baker College on wherever they land. And I wish success to the students who are seeking secondary education there, and that they don't feel like they were shamed in any way by our community for choosing Baker College as a place for educational learning. Thank you.
All right. A lot has been said, and I don't want to repeat what many of you said, but I'll share my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. This has been, at the end of the day, I think ultimately the process worked. And so I think I agree with Councilman Martin that there may be ways to tighten up the NRA or modify it, the process, so that there's community engagement earlier in the process. But just understand that the NRA is not something we do frequently. We've done maybe 3 of them, I think. And we do it when we think a project merits, a deeper dive. We do it when the project is interesting and the partner appears viable. And by viable, I mean financially viable. They're reputable, they're financially viable. They have the ability to bring their dream to fruition if we can do that sort of investigation. I've learned a lot more about Baker College over the last 3 or 4 months than I knew before. I mean, it is a 100-year-old institution, and that was kind of, and has been around and is accredited and all that. But candidly, that was about the extent of my knowledge. But so we've learned a lot about them and the project and the process. And I know it was frustrating for both sides, but ultimately, I think the point that you were trying to make, Mayor Pro Tem, is that most serious partners are not going to enter into that and take the cost risk of doing this sort of investigation with you unless you agree to not talk to other people, while you're doing this, not using the data that they're spending good money on to turn around and flip and talk to other folks. So I still think the NRA is an important development tool used sporadically. We get, and I mentioned this before, we get a lot of people talking to us about projects. And so there may be some people in the community that say, well, you should just let the community kind of weigh in on all of these offers. Believe me, there's a lot of them. You want staff to take a vet at them. You want council to take a vet. You can argue whether we should have gone as far as we did with Baker. But I think for some of us, it was a different an interesting project than the kinds that we had been seeing. We could have easily given that property or sold that property to someone that wanted to build high-end condos or a restaurant or something else. But this was a different kind of project that I still maintain merits debate and investigation. We also knew up front this one was going to be challenging because their timeline was tight. We knew that from the front, and the people that have raised that, I agree with you. So it was going to be a tight timeline, and we said from the beginning that parking was going to be a big deal for us given the dot. So they knew those constraints going in. We knew this was, from the beginning, this wasn't a done deal, that those and other considerations were going to have to be discussed, and they were. And so and then the other major piece that has been discussed here is these community benefits. And I don't know that a community benefits ordinance or whatever we do in that is a substitute for an NRA. I think it goes along with it. But one of the frustrating parts for me is we were having these sort of negotiations between staff and Baker staff about what those community benefits might be. Some of them were pretty attractive, but we never got to a point where we were able to share that with the community. And I can imagine if you're in the community and you're not hearing that, that's frustrating because you're saying, why are you making a deal when you don't have that information? And we are precluded by our agreement with Baker from sharing those until we have an agreement. So I do think there's a way, and Jordan, you and I have talked about this. I don't know that it's the Detroit model. I think there's some pros and cons about the way they've set up their model. I don't know that it's a one-size-fits-all, but I do think that there's a way that we can have a more defined and robust community benefits discussion in this community on projects like this, maybe without some of the trappings of the Detroit model. So I would certainly be open to exploring that. So at the end of the day, it was too tight of a timeline. The parking didn't work. I'm still not convinced the economic benefit. I haven't seen enough research to show what the economic impact in the downtown is. And so maybe unlike Councilman Pollock, I had reached a decision that I wasn't supportive of this project, at least with the information that I had. And that's okay, because to me, that's not a criticism of Baker, and to me, it's not a criticism of the fact that we explored it, because I didn't know what I didn't know back in January or whenever that was that we first heard about this. But what I know today is this isn't a project that I would pursue, and that's good knowledge to know going forward when we look at other projects. So I guess I would just close by reiterating that Jordan, you and your team, and along with Joe, and did a yeoman's job in negotiating this, in leading the community through this discussion, and I appreciate it. And I think overall the process worked. We can refine it, we can tweak it, we can look at the community benefits part, but I appreciate all the work that you did, and as well as the members of the community who brought forth a lot of information and very valid information that was useful in the decision making. So I guess I'll close with that. So no action is required on that item other than we've received and filed the letter. So that concludes our regular agenda this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll move now to call to council. Captain, anything from the police department for the good of the community?
Nothing from the police department.
All right. Dan, anything from HR? All right. Jordan, anything else from community and economic development?
I do just really quickly want to say.
Just so we can all hear you.
Right, and I do just want to really quickly, and just to echo council and the mayor's comments, just to thank everyone on both sides of the podium that participated in the NRA process. CED takes a lot of pride in working for this community and navigating every opportunity that we have to do the best for the community. Sometimes a no is just as healthy as a yes, and so doing the due diligence is something we take very seriously, and the input from all sides was incredibly helpful as we navigated this. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the opportunity to do that and to work for this community. So just thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Chief, anything from the fire department for the good of the community?
So as you all may know, there was a fire on Good Friday, the 19th, early morning at Hearst Cleaners, 800 West 9.
Yep.
Pretty devastating. They're going to be out of business for a while. I'm getting a lot of calls. I probably received 50 calls over the weekend from clientele trying to get their personal property out of there.
Sure.
I'm sure there's several hundred people that have stuff in there. Most of it's destroyed. Some of it may be salvageable, but it's not going to be released for a long time because insurance investigations. My investigation should wrap up tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest to the owner, I'll get a hold of him tomorrow, I couldn't get a hold of him today, that he post some kind of a sign with some instructions because his phone isn't working. And if I get that information, I'll pass it along to Kara. Maybe we can post that for these people.
Okay.
All right.
On that, is the water issue to the adjoining businesses resolved?
Yes, it was
Okay.
resolved that day.
Okay.
They had to go out to New Hudson and get some parts, the plumber.
Okay.
And then they put it together and it had to, the adhesive had to, take care of itself, the pipes. It was a plastic pipe, so they had to
Yeah.
glue it and then it had to sit for
Okay.
like 4 to 6 hours. So that put Red Olive and Big B back in service. All the water meters were on that side of the building. They used to be a Blockbuster Video.
Yep.
So they just ran a pipe over when it became restaurants.
Yeah.
So it burned a hole through the pipe.
Okay. Another question. Do you believe that the initial small parking lot fire and that one are related, or is that part of your investigation that you'll be sharing tomorrow, or?
I'll be sharing it, but I have a good idea what happened.
Okay, so we'll wait for your
Yeah.
assessment. Thank you.
Through the chair. So all the other businesses in the strip mall are open for business?
So Friday afternoon, I called the health department. They came out and cleared everybody. Hong Kong one is right next to the cleaners. They were open. Today I went over there, they were closed for cleaning.
Okay.
Red Olive had a crew over there and they decided to change the ceiling tiles and professionally clean the booths and then get air scrubbers in there, these machines. And Big B's been open since Sunday.
Okay, and Papa Romano's is open?
Papa Romano's is open as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
There's just a little bit of smell lingering of smoke that got in there. There was a substantial damage to the roof and the membrane on the roof.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chief. DPW, Dan, anything from DPW? Okay, parking, Republic, no. All right, you're gonna do recreation? I see Lorena's left us, so come on down. Always good stuff going on there. Including an amazing Easter egg extravaganza.
Yeah, we had extravaganza a week and a half ago, or the Saturday before this previous Saturday. So we would call it a fairly successful event. We had a number of we didn't keep count of everybody because it was a completely free event to the public, but I can tell you we had as many, if not more, than we've had in previous seasons. So a fairly successful venture there. This Friday is Arbor Day. We will be doing our annual tree planting this year at Wanda Park, alongside, I believe, DPW and another organization that I don't know all the details. But that'll be at 10 o'clock Friday morning at Wanda Park. We will be inviting a class or two from Ferndale Lower Elementary that will come out and learn some of the basics of tree care and planting and assist the professionals as they go ahead and plant the new trees at the park. We also have an Arbor Day training that will be this Saturday at 10 o'clock at the Kulik Center, which is completely free to the public. It highlights different ways to plant trees, different ways to maintain trees, the appropriate techniques that you should be using. And as a part of that training, the participants will also be going out to Wanda Park to plant trees there as well. That one, as I said, is completely free, but it does require registration, so you can find out more information at our website and on our registration site. Alongside that, and Saturday is a busy day, We have a mom-to-mom sale that's scheduled for this Saturday. It's, again, completely free to the public. You can come out and shop for various items at bargain rates, and yeah,
Excellent.
that's about it.
Through the
Excellent.
chair.
Oh, through, yeah. hang on.
So on Saturday, regarding the tree planting information session, the tree
Yes.
planting will also go on that day?
Yes.
Okay, so everything's going on that, okay.
Yes, so they'll be transported from the Kulik Center to Wanda Park in the second half of the training session.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Cheryl, anything else from finance? Because we love to hear from finance. All right. Kara, anything from community? All
Let's
right.
push this to 10 if we can. Keep this party going. So, we have Bike Month coming up, starting May 1st. May is Bike Month. I'm doing this on behalf of our planning manager, Justin Lyons. So, we're gonna be having community bike rides, which were so popular last year that they were almost getting too big, which is wonderful. So they've added a couple this year. There'll be 5 of those. There's gonna be a specific, community bike ride for health and fitness, where they're gonna be stopping and actually working out along the way. That one's sponsored by the Fit Park. Downtown Bike Rodeo, for the kids. That's super exciting. That one will be May 16th. There's also gonna be Bike to Work Day and then a bike repair basics class. And, all of these dates, times, and more information about all of it can be found on ferndalemoves.com. It's also gonna be on the city's Facebook page as well as the city's regular website, ferndalemi.gov. So,
Excellent, thank you. Marty, anything for the city clerk's office?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right. Joe, anything for the city manager's office?
I do have one brief comment to make in regards to a question that was posed to me at the previous meeting regarding an update on the NREF for the DOT and our partner Versa Wanda LLC. So I didn't have the agreement in front of me, but we did confer with Versa and the agreement between then and now. And the 150 days in question, both sides in good faith determined that 150 business days was more appropriate, and we also would exempt federally observed holidays and any other city holidays and off Fridays that the city does not work and conduct business. So our 150 days that was agreed upon during our schedule is through June 10th. To that end, both sides have a significant amount of time and resources invested, and that is manifested through some public meetings where the city and Versa have presented requests for brownfield incentive approval through the city's brownfield board, as presented through city council. We've received approval from both of those in December and January. The DDA board actually approved a partnership that supports the incentives package that supports the goals of this project. So, and currently we're actually in process with the state of Michigan, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MBDC. Both the city and Versa have submitted towards an incentives package through the state that would support this project. In lieu of the state supporting and all these local agencies supporting this project, the vision for the project as it was issued and described in 2 series of requests for qualifications could not be realized. And principally, those are to develop 20,000 square feet of office on spec, that means without a guaranteed tenant, in downtown Ferndale. Versa Wanda LLC competitively bid and was agreed to achieve that. And additionally, to market those, that office space and any commercial west space on West Troy to be sub-market, which was definitely contrary to most developers who responded to most of our series of competitive RFQs. So those, in principle, put Versa ahead of the majority of the pack for a competitive process. As a matter of fact, in the first round, we received multiple responses for development on Troy, but all of the responses were not interested in developing any office space, and they all wanted either market or above market lease rate pricing for the office and retail space, but actually not office, but they would develop market rate condos in lieu of the office. And so City Council and the Planning Commission agreed that that didn't meet our development goals, and so we actually made a modification to the site plan, and then recast the RFQ in May.
Anything else?
That'll do it.
All right. Dan?
Just one item. One of the residents indicated a concern regarding skateboarders on city sidewalks within the central business district.
Yes.
I just wanted to remind council and the audience that skateboarding on city sidewalks within the central business district is precluded and prohibited under city ordinance. And further, skateboarders are to yield the right of way to pedestrians on sidewalks within the city. those are both provisions in the city code, and people should be aware of that.
Thank you. Good reminder. Councilman Martin.
Yep. On Thursday, May 23rd, Ferncare is having their 11th annual dinner. The location has changed this year. It is at the Detroit Yacht Club this year. If you're not familiar, Ferncare is a clinic in Ferndale that provides health care to those who are uninsured and also helps them find insurance besides providing needed health care. So if you would like tickets, you can go to ferncare.org. Again, that's Thursday, May 23rd from 6 to 9 p.m. And that is with a strolling dinner. There'll be a program and a silent auction at the Detroit Yacht Club. 11th Annual Ferndale Annual Dinner.
Excellent. Councilwoman Lee-May.
All right, well, a long night. I just want to say that I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter weekend. And I just wanted to also say that I'm very pleased because with that chicken ordinance, I was named after a chicken over the weekend. So, in fact, we all were. So I thought that was pretty great. But that's
Every day. Yeah.
That's the first.
But that is it.
Excellent.
Nothing more.
All right. Councilwoman Piana.
I have nothing tonight.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Did you go?
Yes.
Oh, I missed it, sorry. I have nothing, sorry.
The only thing I have is a big congratulations to the folks at the James who did their ribbon cutting this week. If you don't know, the James is the former St. James Grade School over here on Woodward. It is now a beautiful and modern senior living facility. It's a great adaptive reuse of a building that had been vacant for about 10 years. So if you or someone you know in your family is interested in staying right here in Ferndale, but wants to get out of a single-family house or whatever situation they're in and get into a nice senior living facility, I encourage you to check out the James right here in near downtown Ferndale. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
Yeah, can I ask that lady my question real quick?
You don't need